Andrew, at this end of it, please save it. Because I think we were trying to track it down last time and we were trying to find it.
Okay, the YouTube is almost up. Thank you, Stephen.
Howard, are you still enjoying the sun or
it's actually the same weather here. Last night, literally all of Silicon Valley lost the internet.
Wow.
Well, that's quite depressing to know that the most digital place in the world that I'm
Yeah,
lost
that's a
internet.
scary sign.
I'm
By
sure.
the way, do you see my video, by the way?
Yes.
We do.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a chandelier about to ping you in the head.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the
Where are
hotel
you,
room.
Howard?
Oh, in Silicon Valley.
Oh, oh, wow.
Are you at your private winery,
No,
Howard?
no, nothing like that.
Okay, it's a nice
He's
background.
he's at the Bartles and James factories where he's at.
It's a nice background.
After the meeting, maybe.
So unfortunately, we have to ask if somebody can take the minutes. We must request this at the start of each of our committee meetings. Barbara has done it recently. Let's see, who hasn't done it for a while? We don't have that many members on as of yet.
So Andrew, are you host or Howard, are you host?
Whatever you do, Michelle, is fine.
Andrew will be the host.
Thank
and
you.
Howard.
We'll do it in alphabetical order.
Just, I want to be clear. Andrew's going to be the host. Howard will be co-host.
I see it.
Okay.
I can take the minutes.
Are you sure, Sarah?
Sure, yep.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Okay, seeing as how one of Colleen's colleagues is at the airport and is under a time restraint, we're going to make item number 3 the first item to accommodate her. So Colleen, tell us your colleague's name and let's start.
Can I just say one thing, Michelle? A handful of people need to be promoted. If you just make me co-host, I'll do it as we speak. If you make me co-host as well, and then I'll promote. There's some attendees like Jay and others who need to be moved into the main room, and I'll do it.
Can I just confirm, is anybody from the 20th or the 24th precinct coming?
I can join it as well. I reached out, and unfortunately, due to a combination of events and shortages, that they cannot. What they did say is that if we want to organize specific questions, they'll do their best to respond. They did respond. I did forward it on to both Howard and Andrew as they responded. But they did respond, unfortunately. But that was their answer.
So Steve, just out of curiosity, I have, as a co-host or as a host, I have, let's see, wait a minute. I think it worked. I think I was able to promote Jay and Arena.
Host now.
Yes, and Rich is in the, Rich is there as well, I believe. So you want to promote Rich.
Yes, let me do
If
that.
you want to just make me a co-host, I can just help as you go along. If there's any stuff, it's good to have multiple people. That's why I have several people helping me out. But Rich is in the attendees as well, and we want to promote him as well as Susan Schwartz. But if you want
I
to
just did both of them. I just did both of them. Okay. So I'm sorry. Could you give us your name and we will begin the meeting?
Sure. Hello, I'm Colleen Chattagoon from New York City Department of Transportation. Joining me tonight are my colleagues Susan McSherry and Mark Simon from New York City DOT, where we will give you a presentation about our EV charging station. Susan, are you giving the presentation or is it Mark?
I am. Well, we're going to tag team a little bit so everybody doesn't have to listen to me for the full length of it. I was just wondering who's on handling the screen share. Do I need to bring it up or is it already preloaded somewhere?
Andrew, you have to then go to screen share and enable everyone to screen share.
I will
If you
just
need
note, we
help,
already
I
had a
can help you with
present.
this stuff.
Okay, I would just note, we already had a presentation on this. What we're really doing with this is primarily changing the locations. So if you could make it an abbreviated presentation, that would be fantastic.
Yes, absolutely, sure.
Thank
Okay,
you.
not a problem. Not a problem.
Andrew, can I just request, because I know it's your first time being master host, if you just make me co-host so I can help you with this stuff?
Yes, we'll do that.
Just go to the right-handed three dots. It'll make an opportunity to make me co-host, and then you can run the meeting and I can do some of the tech stuff with Howard.
I should also check what I say, what I'm saying is correct before I say it rather than after, but I just want to confirm what I said is in fact correct. I do recall a presentation we had regarding 2 stations, and am I correct to say this is just merely changing the locations?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
this is
so yes.
codifying the
Yeah,
location.
so just we can keep
yeah,
this
so-
pretty abbreviated. Thank you.
Sure. So, well, I'm Susan McSherry. I'm the program manager for this particular demonstration program. I work with my colleague, Mark Simon, who's director of EV policy at DOT. And in fact, in the early go round with Community Board 7, it was Mark that presented to you because I was not available for that meeting. So you may recognize him, and you also may recognize him from being around the neighborhood because he lives nearby. But I guess if we don't have to go through the presentation, I can just, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to just.
Well, I would give a high level summary of it if you can.
Yeah,
Just a couple of minute summary if you can.
A couple of minutes, sure, a couple of minutes summary. It is a demonstration program with Con Edison, and they've selected a equipment provider named Flow to install 100 level 2 fast chargers on city streets, and it's a maximum 4-year demonstration program. And the purpose is to encourage EV ownership, to look and see, how that works and the feasibility of installing curbside chargers around New York City, and how that would work for the city and for EV users. The cost is $2.50 for peak. It's $1 off peak. And we're really testing to see whether or not infrastructure on the street helps to build confidence for consumers. And if we can increase the number of EV vehicle registrations as opposed to gas or what we call internal combustion engine vehicles as a way to promote transition to cleaner energy and reduce the climate impacts of transportation. So we did a study, just to, super fast forward, there was a study done with consultants to look at locations that made sense. We tried to look at the outer boroughs. These are not going to go into into Manhattan necessarily, not in the core, but we do have a number of locations in Manhattan, which would be 6 parking spaces on the Upper West Side, 6 parking spaces on the Upper East Side, and 2 parking spaces in Washington Heights. Again, there's only 100 chargers, 100 parking spaces total for public use. So it's a pretty small demonstration program. When we last came to Community Board 7, the locations that had proved to be feasible, that there were no underground subsurface conflicts or above ground conflicts, were West 93rd Street and Central Park West, West 86th Street and West End Avenue, and West 70th Street off of West End Avenue. So, and then COVID hit. So we made that decision. We went and we had these outreach meetings. We were working with Con Edison to tee up the construction for these various locations. There's a total of 39 locations, which includes 4 locations for NYC fleet sites as well. And then COVID hit, and there was a pause for over a year. And when we went back to revisit the sites, to begin to think about how that we would stage and schedule construction, we found that there were sidewalk sheds on the West 70th Street and the West 86th Street locations. We reached out to the owners and we tried to work with the community, with our Manhattan Borough Commissioner's Office and Con Edison. We reached out to the owners, and they did not want to cooperate or help to modify the structures in any way to help accommodate these chargers. So rather than shortchange the Upper West Side, we wanted to stay with the numbers that we had sort of agreed to. So we did another review of locations, and we found two sites that would be the alternate locations for West 86th and West 70th. And those sites are West 76th Street between Amsterdam and Columbus Avenue, which would be one charger, 2 parking spaces, West 76th between Amsterdam and Columbus. And the second location is West 84th Street between Amsterdam and Columbus. Again, 1 charger, 2 parking spaces.
Susan, can you just tell us if the north or south side of street?
North.
Both of them?
Yeah, so the orientation of the vehicle would be a parallel, left side parallel parking. By design, because most of the ports on the vehicles themselves for electric vehicles, most of them are on that side of the vehicle. Not all, but most of them are. So that would shorten, having to pull the cord any further than was necessary.
So that's why there's your eastbound streets, obviously.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, okay.
Correct. So that's what we wanted to talk to you about. We wanted to make sure that those locations were, you all were agreeable to that change. We put them, both of them are near like the park. There's a park area on West 84th Street, and on West 76th Street, there's also some, sort of open space with the school there. And it will be very near, that it'll be a little bit further down the block, not at the corner as the other ones were meant to be designed. We tried to keep them near the intersection so that they would be visible. These might be a little bit further in, but not that far in, not mid-block by any stretch. And so again, this is a program that's really, we're hoping creates some momentum. The automotive industry has really started their transition in terms of building EVs. They've made pronouncements about building only electric vehicles by 2045, 2050, et cetera. And they are well underway. And so we want to sort of test the waters, see how this helps, inform how that trend might work out for vehicle owners in New York City, and then hopefully take it from there and potentially build out additional infrastructure going forward.
Do you know how long construction will take before these places are ready?
For a single post location, the sidewalk work takes about 3 to 4 days. And then the Con Ed comes in and they connect the power from the street to the charging station. That takes maybe a day or 2 as well. So it's there. The construction happens pretty quickly. Once these guys, locate there and set up, they get in and out pretty fast.
And what will the signage say at these locations? Unless you have a representation of something you can put on the screen, we'll enable screen sharing if we can. We did do a rule change, a CAPA rule change to, would be on slide 5. I'm terrible at this stuff too, so I'm not really sure how to, let me see if I can find it. Oh, here we go. Share that. Okay. Let me go to slideshow. Great.
Slide. There we go. Okay. So I'll just go through. This is the project background very quickly. The locations, the spatial distribution of the chargers throughout the city. This is what the charger will look like. And of course, you'll get a copy of this presentation and you can dive into it a little deeper if you'd like. This is our first location that was built and energized. This is on Putnam Place and Gun Hill Road in the Bronx. You'll see on the drive rail, just past this vehicle, the new signage, EV charging, electric vehicle charging only. There is also underneath that on the drive rail itself, another regulatory sign, which is for alternate side. So they all apply. The parking space for the charger is really meant to be a curbside amenity, but drivers still need to pay the meter. They still need to move the car for sanitation to come through and clean the streets, etc. And then just below that, there's an informational sign, non-regulatory, that just informs the reader that this is a 7.2 kilowatt charger, I think.
Well, between 6.6, 7. Yeah.
6.67, and that it can provide up to 20 miles per hour of recharge on a battery electric vehicle, and basically that's it.
And how long to take to charge the vehicle?
It's really dependent on the car itself. Full battery electric vehicles can accept. They have an onboard charge, and that's why Mark is on, because Mark is more of a technical expert on this. There's an onboard charger on the vehicles themselves. So while the the charger at the curb can provide up to 20 miles per hour of charge, it's really the vehicle, the capability of the vehicle to take, at whatever speed the vehicle has been built for.
Right.
Right.
Mark, do you want to just elaborate maybe a little?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few older cars that this has come up because since we're charging by the hour, there are a few older cars that can only take like half of the power of this one. But most cars made in the last few years and into the future can accept whatever the 6.6, 7 kilowatts, and 7 kilowatts. An efficient car right now gets about 4 miles per kilowatt. Some are a little less, some are a little more. And so if you're getting around the 7, you could be getting as high as like 28 miles in an hour.
And is the city publishing an application or an online web map to let people know where the charging stations are?
Yes, there is, let me just scroll down a little bit and I can show you. So this is just to get this through this quick. This is the slide showing the images of the locations on West 76th and West 84th Street. And then we do on this slideshow go into background about the reasons why, which is that, transportation is the source of greenhouse gas emissions, et cetera, and sort of break that down by responsible party, whether it's passenger cars or heavy duty trucks or buses, et cetera. And, how this helps achieve the city's greenhouse gas reduction goals, what part it plays in the overall, policy roadmap. This slide shows how, as Mark alluded to, there are different levels of chargers. There are different levels of onboard chargers on the vehicles. There's also different levels of chargers. And so this is a representation of the charging speed and the power requirements and where you would likely find a charger. You could just plug into a regular outlet. If you had a plug-in hybrid of, like an old model, and you don't drive a lot, a level 1 would work for you. If you had a garage, you could just plug right in. Level 2, you might want to, get some juice back in the vehicle a little bit faster. You can do it at your home garage, but this is what usually you would find on street or in a parking lot. And then the DC fast chargers are more of the on-highway experience where you would pull over and stay for a little while, maybe half an hour or so. And those chargers are getting larger and larger as the technology improves. So it will eventually be a very fast charge in the future. And but this is the slide I wanted to get to. We did open up a site on DOT's website. I should say a screen. Sorry, not sure what I would call this, but anyway, it's New York City and www.nyc.gov. It's Plug NYC is sort of the catchphrase for all of the chargers that the city is installing for this EV expansion, and trying to support drivers and vehicle owners who would like to change to electric vehicles, but just don't feel like they are supported by infrastructure, and they have what's called range anxiety. So, we're trying to increase the information, put more information out there, inform the public, and just really raise awareness and provide supportive infrastructure so that people can make a choice as a consumer as to what they might want to buy and what role they play. It's very, each individual plays a role in this greenhouse gas reduction strategy by the vehicle that they drive. So we're trying to just, make sure that we are connecting with people on that level and providing them with the information that they need to make an informed purchase.
Just jumping in, you had asked about identifying the locations. The primary site that, we do identify them, but the primary site most EV owners go to is called PlugShare, and they are on PlugShare. They show every charging site in the United States is on PlugShare. So you look at the map, see what's in your neighborhood, and so you'll see if you look at the 93rd and Central Park West site, it's listed there and what its capabilities are and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, sorry about that. I lost that thread. But just to a finer point, we don't have that map laid out. We don't have the addresses yet on our website because we are still working with Con Edison. Again, because of this change of locations, Con Edison has to do a change order with their contractor. So until we know that that construction is scheduled, everything's going forward, there isn't any last minute hiccup, they find something in the street that all of a sudden, kills that site off because there's a telecom conflict, for instance, or something like that. So we're sort of keeping it close to the vest. We'd like to get all of them finalized and sort of built, and then we will be putting together, more information on the DOT website with all of the locations. But to Mark's point, as each one turns on, and we have 62 that have already been activated out of the 100, and you can find those on PlugShare. On PlugShare, you can look up by charger provider. So you would look up, Flow. You would look up under Flow, and then all the locations that Flow has in New York City would pop up on a map in PlugShare.
Why don't we just take the questions and then we can move on. Sarah has her hand up, then Doug, then Arena, and then Quinn. So those in that order.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I was wondering, is this only for vehicles, or could any electric device use these, like a electric moped or an e-bike? And then I also saw a good question in the chat. I want to make sure it gets elevated, which is there a fine if a non-EV car parks there, and how does that get enforced? Thanks.
So to the first question, it is for vehicles only. It's purpose built at the voltage for a vehicle. It's actually too much power for a moped or an e-bike. That would have to be, definitely stepped down. And I think, with electrical codes being what they are, they can't really multitask this particular post. Maybe some future designs might take that into account, but this pilot does not. And to your second point, The rule is EV, electric vehicle charging, no standing and all others. So if you are a vehicle, even if you're an electric vehicle and you're parked in one of these parking spaces, if you are not connected by the cord, you could be subject to receiving a parking ticket. The vehicle must be charging in order to be like legal in that space.
And that's just, NYPD giving out tickets?
Right.
Thank you.
But they have been enforcing, like on 93rd Street.
Doug, and then Irena, and then Ken.
Thank you for the presentation. Good to see that we're getting greener. Just two quick questions. One is, you mentioned that the locations changed and there were sidewalk sheds. What type of sheds were they? Was that building construction, or was that a restaurant shed? What were there that were immovable? And also on West 76th Street, I'm just wondering, I know there's a city bike station right there. I wanted to know if how close it's going to be, if that's going to be, if it's going to need to be moved. Thanks.
So the sheds were sidewalk sheds, and I believe that they were erected for safety reasons.
Construction on the building above or something.
Construction on the building, or the building didn't pass some sort of inspection or something along those lines. I'm trying to remember the second part of your question. I'm sorry.
Oh, just on 76th Street, the city bike station. That's
the city bike station, right? So we can send you a schematic of that design. I don't think that they're side by side. Con Ed has just finished finalizing the design there, and they are working on their change order. So
the city bike station is going to stay where it is? Is that the plan?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
I just have a comment. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Mark. I live on 93rd Street, and I've seen this already. It's actually off of Central Park West on 93rd between Columbus and Central Park West. And I just want to say that every time I go by, someone's charging their car. So hats off to you guys. You picked a really good location. The people in this area obviously have electric vehicles. And so I just wanted you to know that it is in use.
Terrific. Glad to hear it.
Ken?
Yeah, thank you for this. I had a few questions. 84th Street, that's in front of the playground that's just west of what used to be Brandeis High School?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And these are level 2 stations?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. And is there an app for payment?
Yeah, good question. So the station is being managed, is basically owned and operated by Flow. Their Canadian company, Add Energy, is their parent company. It is app-based. You download the app, and then you can, basically interact with the charger. They request that your credit card go on file, but you may not always necessarily have to do that. You can just download the credit card for that particular session. You don't necessarily need to have an account with them, but I think it just makes the experience easier and more efficient. And for BEV owners who may have accounts with a ChargePoint, which is also a major EV charger company, And there are several charge points around the city, charge point stations. There is a roaming agreement. So even if you had a charge point card, you were a charge point customer, you could still use the flow station. But yes, it is mostly app-based. App.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you need a resolution from us on this?
Oh,
And what, it would be great if we get something in writing
Sure.
from the community board in support of it.
Yeah.
Of the 2 new locations.
Does anyone want to propose one?
I'm going to stop sharing this.
I'll propose that we approve both of these locations. They seem fine.
Okay, all those on the committee who are in favor?
Hold it. We need a second and we have discussion.
I'll second.
Second,
Okay, I thought we had the discussion, but is there anyone who wants to say something with respect to that proposed resolution?
Well, I would just say that, in the hierarchy of uses of the curb space, replacing car storage with a charging station is a step in the right direction. In part because an estimated couple of thousand New Yorkers die of premature deaths every year due to exhaust, and also the contribution to our carbon footprint. But electric vehicles are still cars. So we need to be moving away from cars in general, but this is a much better usage of the curb.
Howard, I just wanted to make a point of order that we discussed, and that is if you're going to vote on a resolution, my suggestion is somebody write the resolution, put it up and vote on it based on the challenges that we've had.
Okay.
So it seems
Barbara,
like
do you
a
want to,
resolution, but it seems like it could be more complex. So again, please write it up, someone put it on the screen, and then we can have a clear visual of what everyone voted on. I'll hand it
Okay.
back to you.
I will rely on the person who proposed it to write it, Barbara. I do have one question in the interim. Is this revenue neutral to the city?
Yeah, even though people are, the cost to do this was funded by monies that came from the Public Service Commission.
Can you, I don't know what that is.
The Public Service Commission is the like a regulatory body that oversees electric utilities, the electric utilities in New York State.
And I'm just trying to determine whether our money is going to this or private money. So is that our money or is that private money?
It's private money.
It's private money.
Okay.
And while people are paying for the service, it will in no way recover the costs during this demonstration. So it would
That's
be
Con Ed's loss.
So it's Con Ed's loss,
Yeah.
not the city of New York's.
Correct.
Yes.
And the city of New York is not gaining anything from this, though.
Well, just the learning experience. Our role at DOT was to really provide them permission to site at the curb and, to go through that planning process, but everything else is on them.
Okay. And the cost of the infrastructure is on Con Ed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would also add to somebody's earlier point, I think it was Ken, that while we, are excited about the program and to see how it goes, DOT's, position is please take mass transit, bike or walk. That is our primary, mission and the work that the agency does. What we say at most of these community board meetings is, we prefer that you don't drive, but if you have to drive, we would really prefer that you drive an EV. And that's what this is about.
Barbara, did you get, I know it's very short notice. Did you get a chance to write something?
I'm writing and I'm putting it on the chat. Okay, I don't think
Perfect.
like that fast. I'm sorry.
No problem. You had about 1 minute's notice.
Thank you.
I mean, one option is to go on to
last time
another
I'll-
item and then come back to this, Howard.
Yeah, why don't we, Barbara, why don't you take a few minutes? Don't rush.
Okay, it's easy. I'm
We'll do-
almost done.
We'll do something very, we'll do how about, how about the secondary street naming? Because I know those people are waiting around. So is someone here for the fourth item on our agenda, the secondary street naming for Ballet Hispanico? Is anyone here for that?
Yes, it's in the chat. Emily is here.
Okay, can you unmute her?
Let's see. I think she is, let me promote her. Emily, can you talk now?
Hi, yes, I can see and hear everybody now.
Great.
Okay, great. So thank you so much for inviting me to join this meeting. I have a brief statement I'd like to read if that's all right. So thank you to members of Manhattan Community Board 7 and the Transportation Committee for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'm here to advocate for the co-naming of West 89th Street between Columbus and Amsterdam Avenues as Ballet Hispanico Way in honor of our enduring legacy and contributions to the heart of the Upper West Side community on our milestone 50th anniversary. And I forgot to introduce myself as well. My name is Emily Mathis Corona, and I'm the Assistant Director of Institutional Relations at Ballet Hispanico. For 50 years, Ballet Hispanico has been an integral part of the New York cultural landscape, providing excellence in dance education and performances to audiences in New York City and around the world. Since 1984, Ballet Hispanico has made its home in the Upper West Side and has become permanently ingrained in this community. From our headquarters on 89th Street between Columbus and Amsterdam, we have thrived and grown to become the largest Latinx cultural organization in the United States. Now, as we celebrate our 50th anniversary, we honor the role this community has played in shaping our organizational mission and activities. And we celebrate our achievements together with our Upper West Side neighbors who have been with us from our scrappy grassroots beginning as a small touring dance troupe to our place today as the foremost Latinx dance organization, serving nearly 200,000 annually. Co-naming the block of 89th Street between Columbus and Amsterdam will formalize our permanency in this community, ensuring that the next generation of Upper West Siders can continue to recognize Ballet Hispanico as an indelible part of the local arts environment. In making our desire for street co-naming known to our neighbors, so many replied with stories of how they or their children had danced in our studios, gone to our shows, or enjoyed community events such as our annual block party. Since our founding, we have performed for 2.3 million people around the world, trained over 20,000 students, provided 5.5 million in School of Dance scholarships, and reached over 750,000 New Yorkers through community programming. But it is the stories of individual neighborhood impact, the salon owner on Amsterdam Avenue, whose daughter is now a professional dancer because of her childhood years taking Ballet Hispanico classes, that bring us here today. In this request to co-name 89th Street between Columbus and Amsterdam as Ballet Hispanico Way, we are both humbled and grateful to our Upper West Side neighbors for their years of unfailing support and for allowing us to be a part of their daily lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Is there anybody who would like to discuss the proposed secondary street naming of 89th between Columbus and Amsterdam for Ballet Hispanico Way?
Okay, I have a few questions, but I'll defer to the committee first. So it's Ken, then Mark Diller, not necessarily the community board members, Ken, Mark Diller, and then Irena, and then Doug. Ken.
Okay. Well, as some committee members know, I usually almost always vote against secondary street names, and that's when they are honor individuals. And which is, I think, the purpose of the secondary street names. They're intended to honor important members of our community who are no longer with us, not to provide free advertising for institutions, no matter how admirable, and I'm sure Ballet Hispanico sounds very admirable and has done great work and has given a lot of pleasure to a lot of people and started a lot of ballet careers. But they are still functioning. and they can do their own promotion. And I don't think that the city should be using public space to promote an ongoing institution. So I would vote against.
Thank you, Ken. Mark.
Thank you. Ballet Hispanico is an incredible contribution to our community, and I don't think we should draw a line between individuals and institutions, especially an institution that is as valuable and defining to our neighborhood as this one is. I would remind our colleagues that there are secondary street names around Lincoln Center for Jerome Kern, for Leonard Bernstein, and for other pillars of the arts. And I believe that this would fit very well into that rubric. Plus, I don't want to be blind to the fact that we shouldn't be only honoring white men who are prominent in the arts. We should be honoring all those who have distinguished themselves. There is, I believe, a second reason to vote for this resolution, and that is that Ballet Hispanico's use of the former stables, Andrew's going to help me with the name of it.
Claremont.
Thank you. That is a wonderful example of adaptive reuse of an historic building that otherwise would have fallen into disrepair and then demolition by neglect. So they are a worthy community partner, and I would be proud to vote for this if I were on your committee, which I'm not.
And we actually have secondarily named streets for institutions, not just for individuals. We have a history of doing that where they are very worthy.
Including
Thank you,
Sesame
Mark.
Street.
Yeah, that too, right?
Irena? Yeah, Sesame.
Thank you. I echo Mark. I've lived in this community for several decades now. I was moved into the area when this part of the Upper West Side wasn't so safe. And Ballet Hispanico has endured through, the best of times in this community and the worst of times. And they provide cultural education to hundreds of low-income young people in this neighborhood and across the city, and has served as a performing arts venue for countless dancers who have gone on to perform at Lincoln Center and other places nationally. And I understand Ken's concern, but it's an institution on the Upper West Side, just as Symphony Space has been an institution on the Upper West Side. And they oftentimes, these institutions that have really stabilized the neighborhood and the community often get lost and overshadowed by these larger cultural institutions in the city, both on the Upper West Side and across the 5 boroughs. And I think that this is one institution where we might want to just make an exception here, given its longstanding legacy in our neighborhood. Because, sometimes these cultural institutions are citywide institutions, but Ballet Hispanico has been a citywide institution, but it has always been a neighborhood institution. And I'd like to recognize that. Thank you.
Thank you, Irena.
Doug was next, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I've only heard great things about Ballet Hispanico. I actually do live nearby. I saw a lot of the notices and the solicitations of some of the retailers. I guess, and Mark, thank you for reminding us that it was the repurposing of the Claremont stables. And I guess we went from one kind of hoofing to another kind of hoofing, right? So that's great. One simple question is, how is Ballet Hispanico incorporated, for lack of a better term? Is it a not-for-profit? Is it a for-profit organization? That's my only question.
We are a not-for-profit 501c3.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have Rich Robbins, and I think that should wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm just going to explain. I always vote against street namings. I think this one's probably going to cost me less flack than Sesame Street, not to say that Valle Hispanico isn't equally as worthy. I completely support the idea of paying tribute to the great both people and institutions in our neighborhood. I think that street signs are a really bad way to do it. First of all, because you only get a handful of letters. It doesn't in any way help people who don't know enough about the organization. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned is just all the great work that Valle Hispanico does in the schools. But I think a lot more needs to be said about Valle Hispanico than can be said on a street sign. I also worry that, once we start naming every street after the great person or organization on that block, and Valle Hispanico is definitely a special organization in our community, but we have a number of special organizations. We just create that much more clutter on the street signs, and street signs are meant for safety and for quick directions, not for paying tribute to worthy organizations. So I fully support the idea of having public signage, paying tribute to Valle Hispanico and explaining to the community and to outsiders all the great work that Valle Hispanico does. I don't believe that putting it on a street sign is the right way to do it.
Thank you, Rich. I just wanted to ask, I assume you complied with all of the prerequisites for the secondary street name, which includes, I think, 100 signatures of people in the community that in the vicinity that support it, and the other requirements. I just wanted to confirm that for the committee.
Yes, that's correct. We've collected, I think it's about 120 signatures. We have posted 38 signs for the notice of this hearing around near our space. And we have also collected letters of support from nearly a dozen local organizations.
Great. And
Jesse has sent them to us, Howard.
Okay. And the block, is there a block association there? And if there is, are they in support of the secondary street renaming?
There's not a block association for 89th Street. There is the West Side Community Garden, and they have written us a letter of support.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, does someone want to propose a resolution?
I will move to honor Valle Hispanico by a secondary street naming of 89th Street between Columbus and Amsterdam Avenue.
And if Emily will send me what you read, Emily, I can use some of that to write a resolution. While Barbara's working on hers, I'll work on mine. And then maybe before the end of the meeting, we can vote on both of them.
That would be great, Arena, but I will just note for the city's purposes, all they really need to know is that we are the resolution.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So don't get carried away. Make it easy on yourself and us.
Oh, okay.
People may want to change mine, but it's done. So.
Okay, well, then we'll go back to Barbara and Arena. Again, it's just something simple. Barbara, do you want to put yours in the chat and then read it to us, please?
Oh, I did put it in the chat. And
okay, you're one step
Mark made a number of comments. I copied it into the Google Doc that I put in chat.
Okay, so
and Mark made a number of comments.
Fine.
I just want to comment that after watching last week, I thought the process of the Google and the things didn't work great. So I just want everyone to agree on one thing we're going to read. It led to a disagreement on what was voted. So Howard or Andrew, you give the direction, but we want to have clarity on what we're reading and what we're voting on based on our conversations. That's all I'm asking.
I couldn't think of anything more reasonable. Do you want to read it, Barbara?
Sure. Whereas we are in support of electric vehicles, and whereas in order for them to have increased popularity, charging stations are essential. As the two locations that were originally chosen in the past are now not available, therefore Community Board 7 approves the application to install 2 pilot electric charging stations, one to be located at West 76th Street and Columbus Avenue on the north side of the street, and the other at West 84th Street and Amsterdam on the north side of the street.
Barbara, could I make a suggestion?
Absolutely.
When you're giving the locations, that that implies almost that it's at the corner, and these are not at the corners. They're in the blocks. So can you say, West 76th Street between Columbus and Amsterdam, and the other one between Columbus and Amsterdam?
Sure, okay, I'll have to try to copy this and, yeah, okay,
I was hoping we'd get the exact diagram, but they're not at the corner from what I saw.
okay. All right, trying this again. So saying one to be located mid-block?
Just say on the block between Columbus and Amsterdam, north side of street.
Okay.
You can do that for both of them.
Okay, do I have to do it right now or can we?
No, you can just do that. I think everybody understands what we're voting on now.
Okay, thank you.
We'll finalize the typing of the final language, but is there any discussion?
I think we had the discussion.
I think we've had the discussion.
Ken.
I just think that what I think it was Mark added in pink looks good to me, and I would move to add that to Barbara's resolution.
Yeah, I just deleted the Google Doc on Stephen's request.
I would read into what you want. I don't think people are familiar with the Google Doc. So Ken, if you could read what you want to add, I think that would be better.
Well,
I wrote it and I'm going to suggest that we drop it because Barbara's is sufficient and it's nice and neat and clean and short. So I would probably go, we can get really philosophical about this, but maybe less is more here.
Okay, and I think your wording has vanished anyway.
All right, can we vote? Can we move to a vote?
I have one comment.
Sure.
Barbara, in your first whereas, you said whereas Community Board 7 supports electric vehicles. Is that true? Has the board taken a position on electric vehicles?
Maybe it should say the Transportation Committee.
Has the Transportation Committee taken a position on electric vehicles?
Well, that's what this vote is about.
I agree with Arena. I don't know if that's necessary.
Yeah,
for the resolution.
I think,
we could support those charging stations without being in general in favor of electric vehicles.
Why don't we just say, whereas electric charging stations promote a cleaner use of vehicles, which will benefit all. Maybe just say something general like that.
Okay, sure.
Oh.
That's good.
Thank you, Barbara. Maybe you could, I don't want to put pressure on you, so maybe we'll go to yet another agenda item and give you a few more minutes.
Howard, I finished my resolution, so we can vote on that.
Okay, so we'll go do that, and then we'll do Barbara. We'll be totally done. Irena, please read it.
Sorry, folks, I was trying to stay on to get to the final on the resolution for the EV, but I honestly really do have to go. So I think Colleen, can you represent and thank everybody for me when they do the final?
Yes,
Final
thank you.
run it. Okay, thanks everybody
Thank
for your
you.
time. I really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Susan.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for your support, and hopefully we'll do you proud. Thank you.
So just briefly, whereas Ballet Hispanico is seeking approval from Community Board 7 for secondary street signage on West 89th Street to recognize the legacy of Ballet Hispanico on the Upper West Side, and whereas Ballet Hispanico has met the requirements for such street naming, therefore be it resolved that Community Board 7 approves the secondary naming of West 79th Street as Ballet Hispanico Way. I didn't know if it was Way, Emily.
It's West 89th Street, and it's West 89th Street between Columbus and Amsterdam Avenues.
Okay.
Got to say that.
Okay. And Emily, is it Way or is it not a way in there?
There is a way, Ballet Hispanic.
Okay, fine.
So
So
could you put it in the chat too, so I can copy it into the minutes?
it's in the chat. But Sarah, can you add the Columbus and Amsterdam?
Yep.
Thank you.
Can we have the final verbiage written in chat so that we know exactly what we're voting on?
Well, the final version is in the chat, Rich. The only thing that's not there is between Amsterdam and Columbus.
Then it's not final.
No, it's fine. Oh, whatever.
I'm sorry, I've rewritten mine.
Sarah, perhaps you could copy and paste and put it in, and then you'll have it as well.
Yep, just put it there.
Thank you.
I think she just did.
Great.
Okay,
All right, all in favor of this resolution, can you raise your electronic hands?
And just to clarify, we're voting on the Ballet Hispanico one. Right?
This is for
Right.
Ballet Hispanico, yes.
Thank you.
So let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Looks like 7 committee members are in favor. So let's lower those hands. Let me see, how do I do lower all, here we go, lower all hands.
Yeah.
Okay, committee members opposed to this resolution, please raise your electronic hand. 1. 1 opposed. Okay. Committee members abstaining on the resolution, please raise your hand. I see none. Anybody who has a conflict who is voting no because
I don't think anyone is in that category.
yeah, I don't think anyone is.
You know, actually, I probably should, because we support Ballet Hispanico.
That's not a conflict.
Okay, thank you, Howard.
Okay, so the vote was 7 to 1 to 0 to 0. So all non-committee members in favor of the resolution, can you raise your hand? 1, 2. I see 2.
Mine's
Okay.
going up, Howard, sorry. Got a little stuck there. It's 3.
3, okay. We lowered those. All non-committee members opposed to the resolution, please raise your hand. I see 1. Okay. All non-committee members abstaining on the resolution. Don't see any and no conflicts. Okay. So that was
Now we
3.
can move on to the other
That was
resolution.
3 to 1 to 0 to 0.
If you're ready, Barbara.
Yes, I'm sorry, I really screwed up. The first one I hadn't taken off what I'd originally written, so it came out like very garbled. But the last thing that is there is, I think, the resolution. It's okay with you guys.
Sarah, or just somebody want to proactively read it out loud, and then we can vote.
Sure, I can read it. Whereas electric charging stations promote cleaner air, and whereas in order for them to have increased popularity, charging stations are essential. I think you mean whereas electric vehicles promote cleaner air?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Whereas electric vehicles promote cleaner air, and whereas in order for them to have increased popularity, charging stations are essential, as the 2 locations that were chosen in the past are now not available. Therefore, Community Board 7 Manhattan approves the application to install 2 pilot electric charging stations, one to be on West 76th Street between Columbus and Amsterdam Avenues on the north side of the street, and the other between West 84th Street between Columbus Amsterdam Avenues on the north side of the street.
Yes,
Great.
with Sarah's change, I think that's correct.
Thank you.
I just have one small non-substantive change, which is that as not the 2 locations, but 2 of the locations that were chosen.
Yes, that reads better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can we
All
get the
right.
final language?
Is going to organize the vote.
Yeah, someone going to post the final language?
Just put it.
I think Sarah may have just done it. Increase electronic section essential. As two.
I'll put a the in, yeah.
Yeah, as two of the locations that were chosen on. Yes, that's basically the resolution. Can we have a vote? Committee members in favor, please raise your electronic hand. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I see 8 in favor of the committee. I'll lower those. All opposed, committee members opposed to the resolution, please raise your hand. Don't see any. Any committee members abstaining?
I am, Andrew.
I'm sorry, Howard, what'd you say?
Oh, I'm abstaining, yes.
Okay, well, your hand's not up now, but okay.
Well, I can't raise my hand electronically because I'm a oh, I can. How's that?
See that? Okay, I see 1 abstaining, okay. Non-committee members in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. I see 4. Non-committee members opposed. Don't see any. Non-committee members abstaining. Don't see any. Okay. Great. That passed. Wonderful. Thank you all.
Well, now we can finally get to item number 1 on our agenda, which
Indeed.
is a very significant spike in fatalities in CB7. Basically, there was 1 fatality last year, and so far there have been 9 this year. Rich has put together a short slideshow on this matter, and then after that we can all discuss it. So is it possible to share the screen with Rich? I don't think I can do that. Oh, it's already shared.
Yeah, I see it.
Rich, can you go ahead?
Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. And one correction, Crash Mapper, which is the data that I had originally got, it's where I originally got the data, is missing a very large number of crashes in our district. There actually were 2 fatalities last year. So I've updated it for all the years from 2012 to 2021. Nonetheless, there's been a huge spike in fatalities in our district this year. It's gotten very little notice, but previously we had averaged about 4 fatalities a year, with the number being much lower since 2017. There were 4 deaths in 2017 and 2019, only 2 deaths in 2018 and 2020. And this year, year to date, we've had 9 fatalities. The next slide I'm going to go to shows the location of the fatalities. Actually, I can. Can you see the full screen now? Okay.
You see it.
As you see, 5 of the fatalities were on Amsterdam Avenue, 2 were on the highway, and 2 on Central Park West. And there's a question, I'm not even sure of the answer, whether CB7 has jurisdiction over the highway. It is within the geographic area of our district, and still is very troubling that there are 2 fatalities on the highway this year. Of these fatalities, 5 were pedestrians, 3 were cyclists, and 1 was a motorcyclist on the highway. 7 people were hit by cars or trucks, 1 by an illegal moped, and 1 by an e-bike. For 6 of the crashes of the fatalities where the ages of the people killed were public, 5 were 65 or over, and 1 was a 28-year-old delivery cyclist who was killed by a hit-and-run driver. If we had 9 people killed by guns, the community would be up in arms. But as of last week, when I downloaded these data, there were 389 injuries reported by the NYPD in our district, in addition to the 9 fatalities. Sorry, I'm trying to both see my notes and see the screen, full screen. This is from Crash Mapper. Again, it's missing a number of crashes, but it gives a sense of where the crashes have been. The red dots are the fatalities. The orange dots are where there have been injuries. And we can see, the fatalities, as I said, 3 were cyclists, 5 pedestrians, 1 was a motorcyclist. Of the injuries, 60 were cyclists, 72 pedestrians, 176 motorists. Something else we can see from the NYPD crash data is the vehicle type of the vehicles involved in the crash. I urge everyone to take this with a little bit of a grain of salt. It's not clear if there's meaning by which vehicle is listed as number 1 or vehicle number 2. And also not all the vehicles are always listed, such as the recent hit and run crash that killed the delivery cyclist only shows 1 vehicle, the e-bike. It doesn't show the second vehicle at all. Potentially that's because it was a hit and run, so the police don't know exactly what class of vehicle it is. So that's what I've got just to kick off the conversation.
Okay, I think we have Julia Kite Laidlaw from DOT with us this evening.
Yes, hello.
Yes, you are here. Hi. So obviously we'd like DOT's take on this rash of pedestrian and other fatalities and what DOT is doing about it.
Yes, so I'll start by saying that I very much appreciate CB7's interest in road safety and in Vision Zero, and in the attention that you pay to our engineering projects. And also we at DOT are very disturbed by the increase in fatalities this year, not only in CB7, but citywide as well. It's been a year in which the numbers are really not what we wanted to see. And unfortunately, this isn't just a New York City problem. And talking with my counterparts at New York State and then around the country, it's actually a nationwide problem and a statewide problem.
Can I just ask before you go on, if you think this is a result of coming out of COVID and people feeling safer in vehicles than they do on public transit or other vehicles?
I think that's one component of it. I think it doesn't explain all of it. I think that overall, we're at a time where, in large part because of COVID, we are experiencing disorder throughout all of society. And one way that plays out is through reckless driving and bad driving decisions. So for example, what we know is, we know that all the engineering work that we've done throughout Vision Zero did not vanish between 2020 and 2021. What we do know, what has changed is driver behavior. And when we drill down at what the investigations into these fatal crashes are showing, we're seeing a lot of speeding, failure to yield. We're seeing a shocking number of hit and runs often conceal other wrongdoing like unlicensed driving or DWI. I regret that the 20th and the 24th precincts couldn't send anybody today because we really do feel that the trends that we're seeing are largely down to driver behavior. For example, the number of fatalities this year occurring on Amsterdam Avenue is very disturbing to us because we have redesigned the street extensively throughout the past several years. When we look at some of the specifics of crashes, we see it's really a mix of things in these crashes on the Upper West Side. We've had 2 hit and runs of the non-highway crashes. 2 of them were hit and runs. One of them was a failure to yield the right of way to a pedestrian on a turn. That's really a classic driver error that we've tried very hard to design against through things like lowering the speed limits by adding pedestrian space on a lot of streets. We've also seen unsafe backing. We've seen pedestrian mid-block crossings. We've seen disregarding traffic signals. We've really seen a whole gamut. So it's hard to say that there is one specific behavior driving the changes this year. But what I can say is that what we're seeing on a citywide level is more speeding, more reckless driving, and more hit and runs, which are likely concealing criminal behavior.
Well, the obvious question, do you or the DOT have anything you can propose that would help mitigate this problem or try to reduce what's the harm that's been happening?
Yes, we have legislation pending in the state sponsored by Deborah Glick and Andrew Bernardes, which would allow the city to run the speed cameras 24/7. Right now, we have speed cameras. We have over 1,700 active right now in 750 school zones. We're great on locations, we think. But the problem is we can only run these cameras 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. on weekdays. And last year I ran the numbers, and I believe it was about 1/3 of our non-highway fatalities happened in school speed zones where there are cameras, but at times when the cameras were not allowed to operate by law, which would be on weekends or at night. So if this bill passes in this next legislative session, unfortunately it didn't pass in the last one, we would be allowed to run these cameras overnight. And these cameras have been like, I never say there's a magic bullet, but they've really been phenomenally useful. We've seen decreases in speeding of about 71% during the times and hours. Like if you look at 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. before and 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. on weekdays after, the violations, the speeding violations we've seen, people going 10 miles an hour or more over the limit, have dropped on average 71% citywide. It's really, beyond what, when you can find an intervention that works that well, you want to do everything that you can to spread it. And what we need right now is nights and weekends.
That sounds like it would make a dramatic.
Oh, go ahead, Howard.
Oh, sorry. That sounds like it would make a dramatic improvement, and I will propose a resolution later on to support that. I just was wondering, before we go to the questions, is there something else that you would promote? That, again, that sounds great. But is there something else as well?
Well, we are working with our counterparts in NYPD to bring up some of the in-person enforcement of the things that we cannot use cameras to do. So of course we can use cameras on red lights, speed, bus lane. We are exploring what are the possibilities for, possibly using them for bike lanes, but there's still things like driving while under the influence that no camera can get. There's things like, driving without a license, driving with fake plates, which we're working with both the sheriff's office and NYPD to try to step up enforcement of that. Because quite frankly, if people believe that enforcement is going to be consistent and swift, that will deter their behavior. That's why speed cameras work so great, because if you're going more than 10 miles over the limit, you are definitely going to get snapped, and you are definitely going to get that $50 ticket. If people start believing that's going to happen for other reckless driving offenses, we think that'll help as well. Last week, we had our annual Dusk and Darkness Day of Awareness, which is a multi-agency event that we always do right before the clocks go back, because now that it's getting dark before 5 p.m., evening rush hour is in darkness. And before we started doing this, we always saw a spike in pedestrian fatalities in winter evenings or winter periods of darkness. But ever since we've started just trying to draw more drivers' attention to it, we've seen those numbers go down somewhat.
Great.
And we're hoping to just keep that messaging going.
What about the anti-crash technology that a lot of car manufacturers are making now? Would legislation to save people a huge amount on their insurance because the car will stop if it detects something in your path automatically? Would that work, do you think?
I'm not sure if we can legislate what insurance companies do, but I do know the private sector has some really promising innovations here. Like, for example, I recently read that Tesla is now using telematics from inside their vehicles to determine, they have a form of insurance for themselves, and they use only the telematics and not your age, not your sex, not where you live or anything like that to decide how much you pay. It's simply depending on how well you drive. And we know that other companies like I think Progressive and Allstate have similar kind of plug-in devices which can monitor your driving, look for things like hard braking and speeding that can indicate unsafe driving. And if you're not doing those bad things, you can get some money off. But I think if more people follow Tesla's lead and simply say like, look, what your pay is going to be based on how you drive, I think that would be a very strong incentive. Unfortunately, we as a city government cannot influence that. Another thing that I think would help, based on my experience in Sweden, is I know that the US DOT is planning next year on releasing some strategies for safe streets. And one thing that federal DOT does is the STAR rating system on new vehicles. It's called NCAP, or New Car Assessment Program, and it's run by NHTSA, which is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. For a few years now, they've been talking about reworking the standards for getting 5 stars, and now having it be so that unless your vehicle has that kind of automatic emergency braking or blind spot detection or other things that help prevent impacts to the people outside the car, you won't get 5 stars. Right now, it's remarkably easy to get 5 stars. Pretty much you have to try to not get 4. What they found in Sweden was that when they started requiring these pedestrian safety features on cars, all the manufacturers made them standard. They weren't part of like a luxury trim package. Everyone wanted the 5 stars, so they did it. In America, if we could get the federal DOT to be doing something similar, I believe manufacturers would step up and start making these standard.
Thank you. Why don't we take some questions? That was really helpful, Julia. And again, I think the information will help us ultimately craft a resolution to hopefully mitigate this terrible problem.
Thank you.
Bill Ortiz, then Ken, then Sarah, then Arena, and then Susan Schwartz.
Thank you, Howard. And thank you for the presentation, Richard. It was very good information to share. I just had some questions as far as the DOT's website is concerned. So I'm looking at the Vision Zero website for NYC, and there's a couple of very useful links like bicycle laws, I think bicycling for your house, cycling in New York City. But these are all dead links. They all lead to 404 not found. So I think it's important for us to have that up and running and working. So I'm sure Andrew would be happy to hear that I'm back on the trains full time now.
All right.
Because trains and buses, unless I'm going to the groceries or something, because it's really dangerous on the bike. And I'm a very experienced cyclist. I rode as a kid and I rode, pretty much every day for the past year and a half. And the reason what's dangerous are the other cyclists. So just to give a perspective, I basically hit the West Side Highway bike path, and it's a very comfortable ride. It's very enjoyable. But the times I've either had an accident or friendly exchange with other cyclists is when I actually stop at red lights. So I had 2 cyclists crash into me, gently, but crash into me. And I had one guy that used nice language as he continued to proceed. So I think there's a challenge of having people understand the law. And I think the challenge is because the city hasn't done anything to educate New Yorkers that there are real rules when it comes to riding the bikes. And I know it's doable. I think, was it 5 or 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when cars had to go from 35 to 25 miles per hour, this thing was talked about for months and months, and everyone got it. I remember taking a cab and the guy was scared to go fast, at all. So I think we should have the city make more of an effort in educating people what's the proper protocol, how to ride the bike, and how to behave on a bike path and how to respect the road, honestly, with everyone on the road, cyclists, motor vehicles, pedestrians. People don't ever stop for pedestrians. I'm like the weirdo that actually stops on the West Side Highway bike path. So those are the quick points I wanted to add. And I think we have to make a commitment as a committee to keep bringing this up, because we've had fatalities on both ends. Car crashes, cyclists, pedestrians, and there hasn't been any change. And we absolutely have to make change. And it won't happen until our voices finally get heard. So those are my 2 cents there.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much for
just make
alerting me to the dead links. I'll look into that and see what went wrong.
I would just make the point that there is a lot of education for drivers. In fact, they have to pass both a written test and a driving test, and they are still accounting for about 99% of the deaths. So it's not so much, we can't rely completely on education. Again, drivers are very well educated. They've proven it through testing.
Cyclists are not very well educated. And so when I'm on the road, I actually feel much safer riding on the street than I do on a bike path, because at least I know, and there's law behind it, that these drivers have taken an exam. But when I get rear-ended from a cyclist because I stopped at a red light and we want to have a friendly exchange, it's just more difficult. It's just, I've said this before, it's safer to ride on Broadway than it is on Amsterdam or Columbus. And the bike path right now, between normal working hours when you're going home from 4 to 7, It's impossible. So I've been taking the train, and we haven't educated our cyclists at all. You can do a random survey of people blinded, and they'll assume what the rules are, and they may be correct. But if you ask them if they observe people following the law, the answer is going to be no.
Okay. Ken?
Okay, hi, Julia.
Here.
As often happens at committee board meetings,
Someone
we're
needs
talking.
to mute themselves.
So I get
credit. I
I
think
think
it's
that's
Jay.
Jay.
Oh, can I
Jay,
mute Jay?
there's some
I can
background.
do it. Let's keep on. Give me a
Okay.
sec. Jay's muted. Go ahead. I'll,
Okay.
please go with it.
As often happens at community board meetings, we start talking about deaths and injuries on our streets, and the conversation almost immediately goes to talking about those bad cyclists. So I have three questions, not necessarily relating to cyclists, but the first one is, there was somebody put something in the chat about lawless cyclists. Looking at the city as a whole and DOT's examination of the what's killing and injuring people, are we talking about cyclists? Or are we talking about something else? And if so, what is that something else?
I think we're talking about a mix of things. I mean, the landscape of what people are using on the streets is actually quite different now from what it was when we started Vision Zero in 2014. Back then, we didn't have stand-up e-scooters. We didn't have a lot of these illegal mopeds. We didn't have a lot of the e-bikes. And whenever you add, mass and acceleration, it has an impact on what the crashes. Overwhelmingly still, the crashes are involving cars, but we do have a larger proportion of SUVs. Again, more mass at a certain level of speed. The pedestrian or the cyclist is never going to come out well there. What is disturbing this year is that we've had 3 pedestrians killed by bikes or mopeds, whereas it used to be we would have 1 at most. Many years we would have none, and we think this just simply reflects the changing ecosystem on the road.
Is that citywide?
Citywide, yes. And two of the 3, though, did happen on the Upper West Side.
Right.
And they did happen on Amsterdam Avenue. Again, it's we do know that there in one of them there was obvious criminal activity. The person left the scene, which just makes it one of a disturbing number of hit and runs that we've seen this year. I couldn't say that there's really one thing to pinpoint that would magically bring down the numbers. I wish there was. It would make things a lot easier. But when we look at how the goal of Vision Zero is to not make sure there's 0 crashes, but rather to make sure that death and serious injury is avoided, that's why we focus so much on speed, because speed is so often the determinant of living and dying, especially to less protected users. And I do appreciate what Mr. Ortiz is saying, his perspective as a cyclist, because we are promoting bicycling. We do want to see it as a healthy, green, efficient, convenient way to travel, but we are concerned if, say, newer cyclists might be put off if they don't feel safe, not only from cars, but maybe from other cyclists who aren't obeying the laws either. So I do appreciate his perspective on this.
Okay, I just say of the 2, and I haven't finished, Howard, of the 2 that occurred on the Upper West Side, one was an illegal moped and shouldn't have been on the streets at all. And the other, nobody has been able to demonstrate there was any, that the operator of the e-bike was blameworthy in the least. It was somebody who came out between 2 parked cars and crossed the bike lane mid-block. So, it did happen to involve, very unfortunately, a bicycle, but no blame has been assessed, as far as I know. So I wanted to, my other question is, with regard to the death, this is just an example, the death of Jeffrey Williamson at Central Park West in '86. I had asked DOT whether you were contemplating any infrastructure changes there. And we were told that it was the driver failed to yield to Jeffrey. So therefore, there would, since the crash was attributable to that, there wouldn't be any, you wouldn't be looking at any infrastructure changes. And that's my understanding is that's not the way it works in Sweden, for instance. In Sweden, they look at any killing on the street as a failure, a potential failure of their infrastructure. And you can have both. You can have somebody a driver who is negligent, but then you go back on the street and you say, well, how could we design the street so it's a lot harder for a driver to be negligent? And when we were advocating for the Central Park West bike lane, we advocated for safer treatments at major intersections like 86th Street, which would not have made it possible for a driver to legally make that right into a cyclist. For instance, a split phase. So I'm wondering, is that DOT policy just to say, no, it's driver negligence, so we can't do anything?
No, that's not what we do. I want to just address this really quickly because unfortunately I do have a hard stop at 8 a.m. You might hear in the background I have 2 sick screaming toddlers. So I just want to
You do mean 8 p.m., right?
8, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm going to have to rush through this a bit, but yes, in addressing Mr. Williamson's crash, I know that the exact circumstances of the crash are still under investigation, but I do know that when we designed the Central Park West bike lane, we had turning conflicts in mind. And that's why at this intersection, you find that dedicated right turn only lane for vehicular traffic. And we also have a signal treatment called the lagging right turn that it combines like, if you're familiar with the leading pedestrian interval, but this combines a bicycle and pedestrian leading phase where right turns from that lane are prohibited. There's a red arrow, and then it becomes a flashing amber right turn, indicating the driver needs to yield to the bike traffic and proceed with caution. This design was chosen over the alternative of the two-way bike lane because all our modeling showed that it would be safer than a two-way path, especially on turns. And of course, we deeply regret that our engineering here could not prevent the tragedy. We heard from Mr. Williamson's widow at the last city council hearing we attended. And it's very disturbing to us when our best practices in engineering are not 100% fail-safe. We did look at the alternative that you and I believe Councilwoman Rosenthal proposed. And the reason that we didn't do that kind of treatment was because we actually saw that the potential for even more fatal crashes would be with that type of design. To the best of our engineering knowledge, of course, we can never predict what's going to perfectly happen every time. But what we saw we'd have a lot more left turn conflicts from southbound drivers. We'd have this, it would be kind of counterintuitive, difficult for drivers to see the southbound contraflow bicycle users. We could do separate signal phases for southbound left turns, but that when we modeled it, it resulted in multiple block queuing and like backups and spillbacks. And we know that that would in turn create even more dangers to, say, pedestrians if we now had more extensive backups and blocking of the box. Also, for buses, the two-way design created some difficult head-on collision for the proposed southbound lanes. Please rest assured that we did look at alternative designs very seriously. And ultimately, the one that we chose was the one we believed would be most safe. And our engineers were very disturbed by the fatality. And again, we are very, very sorry that this happens. But as much as we try, we have to go with what our best engineering skills tell us. And unfortunately, I mean, we cannot play God, and we can only continue to look at what are the best case scenarios we can create with engineering.
Julia, do you have the direction of travel of all of these accidents? Which way the driver was driving or the pedestrian was moving or any of those the bike?
Most of them I do. They would come from police reports.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm very sorry, I'm going to have to leave, but if anyone has further questions, I can be reached at jkite@dot.nyc.gov. Very sorry, children.
Don't be sorry, Julia. We really appreciate your being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thanks. Take care.
Why don't we do Sarah Lind, then Susan, then Rich Robbins, and Steve Brown.
Yeah, I'm sad she had to go, but Colleen, maybe you can answer my question. I think, as she said, we've had nearly 300 people killed on the streets this year alone, which is a really huge spike. Most of them were pedestrians. The vast majority of them were killed by vehicles. Many of them were children. And many of them were killed by drivers who had many, many infractions on their records. So I wanted to ask about the dangerous vehicle abatement program and if we know what's going on with the implementation of that. And also we know, for example, the driver who killed baby Abatement had actually taken the course that would be the course for people with that many infractions, and then he continued to drive recklessly. So I was wondering if DOT has been looking into ways to deal with those kinds of drivers who have, huge records, take the course and continue to drive recklessly, because we know that these are the drivers who are killing people.
Sarah, that's an excellent question. I know, as far as I'm concerned, that we are looking at the dangerous vehicle abatement program. As a matter of fact, my colleagues in our safety division have been working with several stakeholders about this. I can get you more information I'll share with the community board on next steps and what we are doing in terms of gathering information and penalizing drivers for their bad behavior. But it is a program that is under DOT, yes.
Okay, Susan, and then Rich Robbins, and then Steve.
Thanks, guys. Checking in from Fargo, North Dakota. I just want to say that in nursery school and kindergarten, I learned how to share. And it seems like the bikers in New York don't know how to share. Pedestrians have every right to be in the city, and we are in danger all the time. And once again, I'm going to ask for a study done on the bow tie of death at 71st and Broadway, where the bikers are going nuts at every moment. Daytime, nighttime. I live there. It's terrifying. When I come home from anything, when I used to come home from community board meetings, I used to be terrified that I'd be killed on my way home by a biker going nuts on that intersection. Please do something about that. We need enforcement for everything. Everything. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Susan. Rich Robbins, then Steve Brown, then Arena.
Thank you. I was going to thank Julia for coming and for all her work. I note how low a priority 9 fatalities in our district is, that we put this item 3rd on the agenda because a different DOT representative had to leave early, even though Julia also had to leave. I also note that NYPD never speaks about traffic enforcement, either at the citywide level or the local level. It's always an afterthought for them at best. Enforcement in our district is dramatically down this year. In 1 month, there were 0 speeding tickets issued in one of the precincts. At a city council meeting on Vision Zero several weeks ago, Chief Reister of the NYPD Transportation Division mentioned that when gunshots increased, officers were shifted from her group to addressing guns. Of course, we're all very concerned about guns, but there's also a big issue here that street safety is not a priority. If these were, because these were traffic incidents instead of gunshots, they've gone largely unnoticed. It's unfortunate that NYPD was not even able to make it to tonight's meeting. If people were killed 99-1 by guns, not knives, we wouldn't be talking about knives to stop murders. Yet it seems that many people care more about going after bikes than stop fatalities than cars, even though it's a 99-1 ratio between cars and bikes. I also want to point out that community boards often get in the way of DOT in enacting street safety measures. I find it notable that street safety is the only life or death issue where a city agency is forced to defer to a CB to be able to make any changes. The fire department would never have to go to the community board to get approval for where they put hydrants or for other fire safety issues. Yet we have people shouting about how dangerous bikes are at an intersection where there have been very few crashes at all, let alone crashes by bikes. Yet that happens to be the block where that person lives. So every meeting, that person's yelling about how dangerous bikes are on that block, even though there's no data to support that. I have enormous respect for our precincts, but I question whether we can rely on them to stop traffic fatalities when it's not a priority for their leadership. And I wonder if NYPD would be better off splitting traffic enforcement into a completely separate organization. I was going to ask Julia for thoughts on what more community boards can do. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it. But I think community boards should get out of the business of blocking DOT from making street safety issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen.
I'm happy to let Elaine and other people go first, and I'm happy to go last, Howard.
Okay, then I guess the next person is Irena.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Rich, for doing the research. I thought Julia was amazing, and hopefully she can come back. And I appreciate, Colleen, you staying on. I wonder whether DOT is considering, and maybe this doesn't fall under DOT, but I think that many of the motorized, these mopeds or mini motorcycles that are out on the street, they're not licensed, right? None of them really have any license plates on them. And so we don't really know if the people riding them have even driver's licenses, right? They're on these bikes, I mean, on these motorcycles, these mini motorcycles. And many of them are out on the street. You know, some of them are in the bike lanes, but a lot of them are on the street. I'm not talking about the ATVs. I'm just talking about these motorcycles that have cropped up everywhere. They're even in Central Park on the drive, and they're not even supposed to be driving in the park. And I wonder if implementing licensing would maybe get some of them off the street. Because I do think it's just a confluence of a lot of different motorized vehicles on the road. I'm not using that as an excuse for why drivers are driving reckless. People who are driving cars are driving recklessly. But I do notice it's just a lot of wheeled vehicles on the streets right now, and some of them may not even be people who know how to drive. And so I wonder what's the plan for these motorcycles? Is anyone talking about making them go through what most motorists need to do and get a license?
Irena, they are supposed to get licenses. That's why they're illegal.
So all of them on the streets are required to have a license?
Yes, and they're all illegal on the streets. Yes.
So Irena, are you talking about?
I don't think that's true, Ken.
Are you talking about motorcycles in general, or?
No, I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about motorcycles like Kawasaki motorcycles.
Right.
I'm talking about this other level of motorized vehicle.
Mopeds.
Mopeds, yeah.
Like
Well,
a Vespa or a moped.
They're not mopeds. They look like mini motorcycles.
But that's the name
That's a
that
moped.
DOT is
I
given
dropped
to
a link
them.
in the chat that has like
I'm not referring to a
description of them.
Vespa. I'm not referring to a Vespa.
Can we just factually say that what you have, just to give you some direction, Irena, I'm just saying you have Vespas and those type of bikes, you have mopeds, you have motorcycles, you have e-bikes or motorized bikes. They're very controversial in our community board, but those are the difference. So just to use the vernacular, Chris, it's got to be one of those vehicles that you're speaking of. I don't think there's any other motorized vehicles that you're assessing to. Just to share some facts.
Okay.
So in order for those to be licensed, I mean, that is a legislative push. I know there was talks about, these mopeds as well as cyclists having license, on their, their equipments, but, there hasn't been any movement on it. But I know the New York Assembly was looking into it, but I don't know what action has been taken in terms of furthering it.
Can I just jump in for 1 second? We're pretty much now on the last resolution, which deals with registration and other issues with regard to this vehicle. So can we leave that part of the discussion to the last resolution? I think Irena, that's a good part of what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Who else has something to say on this? Stephen wanted to go last. So I am putting into the chat a proposed resolution that I quickly wrote up. It's incredibly short. I'll just read it. In order to improve street safety, CB7 supports keeping the existing street speed and red light cameras in operation at all times.
I don't think we can say keeping because that's not the current law. We need a law change in Albany to allow us to operate them 24/7.
Well, that's what I meant. Supports keeping, supporting the change to the law to enable that. Okay, I will add that in.
To allow.
Okay.
To allow.
I will go back to the drawing board, but I will drop the revised one into the chat after Steve speaks.
So my first was just a question, and sorry if it's one of those stupid questions. Why currently do they turn off between 10 and 2? What are the current reasons for
It's the law. They're not allowed to run them 24/7. Albany.
I
makes the
understand it's the
laws.
law. I'm trying to understand what was the rationale of the reason to do that. There must have been some. Sounds like doesn't sound like an arbitrary time that they chose. Colleen, or if somebody knows, great, but does anybody know why they've eliminated these
Because
hours?
they're around
They're in
school
school
zones. And so
Lots of people
theoretically,
don't like them because they promote car use. They want, whatever. Lots of people don't like camera enforcement. And so in order to get the bill passed politically, they limited it both to school zones and to the hours so that they could get it passed. That was the way they were able to say,
And to
like,
the
we care
number
about
that
our
were
kids, we want our kids to be safe, so we'll put them in school zones during
And it
school
was
hours.
severely
It
limited
used to
how many
only be
were
during
allowed.
school hours, and then they expanded it 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Got it. Okay, thanks. I mean, that was, I didn't understand what the rationale was. I'll leave it at that because there's some more hands up now, but I just wanted to.
Okay, there's some more hands up. Let's, for people who've spoken, can we really try to keep it brief because we have another major item. Jay, is your hand up regarding this matter or the other matter? Okay, his hand went down. I don't see any other hands up actually, Steve. Oh, Rich Robbins has something.
Yeah, I think we need to call on the police. I think the automatic enforcement is very important, and we should definitely call on the legislature to change the law to allow greater enforcement. I think we also need to point out that NYPD really needs to step up in its enforcement, that we're concerned that enforcement has dropped, and we've seen a corresponding significant increase in the number of fatalities and injuries, and that we need PD to focus on this issue.
Okay, my takeaway on this is that is a more complicated issue, and I think we should think about the resolution the next week or two. But on the simpler matter, I have dropped a proposed resolution. It's one sentence into the chat, and I was wondering if we could consider that. I'm moving that resolution. I don't know if there'll be a second. The resolution simply says, okay, thank you. Thank you. In order to improve street safety, CB7 supports amending the necessary laws to allow the existing speed and red light cameras to be kept in operation all times. And I may be wrong on this. My understanding of why it was in place only part of the time is there are upstate lawmakers who just didn't like speed cameras. And this is the compromise that they reached to get their vote and get them to go along with it.
And this should have been home rule, this kind of thing.
Right. So I am proposing this modest resolution at this point. And Rich, if you want to, we could consider other things and put them on the agenda for action next month. Because I don't think we're going to reach a resolution on them tonight.
I put in chat one thought that should be included in this is not limiting cameras to school zones.
Well, that requires, my understanding is there's a limited number of cameras. So that's
the speed cameras are usually around schools. The red light cameras, I think, can be anywhere, unless I'm mistaken about that.
So can we advocate expansion of both, eliminating the cap on both kinds of cameras?
Right.
Okay. I will amend it, and that mail is going to take me a couple of minutes. So I think I'd prefer to have the heat off me and move on to something else in the meantime.
Yeah, Howard, we actually have item number 2 that we did not address yet about potential resolution regarding the
The Joan
request
of
by
Arc, yes.
Joan of
Why
Arc.
don't we bring that up and I will work on this resolution. Thank you.
Are any community members looking to speak? I just wondered.
Let's get to item number 2. I think people have been waiting for that perhaps a long time. Is anybody here from the Joan of Arc School to discuss the request for additional parking for teachers? Oh, yes, I see somebody here. Let me see if you can be promoted.
Can I just, sorry, my computer died. Could someone else take notes while I try and get it back on? Is that possible?
Howard, it seems that your technology issues are spreading from the West Coast.
Yeah, thank you, Silicon Valley.
I promoted Raphael Tompkin to speak, Howard, if you'd like them to speak.
Yes, please speak.
Yes, great.
They're allowed.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Sarah, I'm going to take notes.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much for recognizing me to speak. So my name is Raphael Tompkin. I am a teacher at one of the 3 schools at the Joan of Arc campus. I'm a teacher at PS 333 Manhattan School for Children. I'm also in a dual role in addition to being an 8th grade special ed teacher. I am also the UFC chapter leader. I'm the union rep. I've invited other members of our community to participate in this community board hearing. I'm not sure, I can't see the participant list. I'm not sure if anyone else is here, but I'll speak to the item. Basically, we have in our school building, the last time I took account of the teaching staff, paraprofessionals, mental health professionals, secretaries, school aides, cafeteria workers, and custodial staff. We have, I would say, just close to, if not over 200 employees of the DOE. And our on-street parking on West 92nd Street, which goes currently from the middle of the block where the Joan of Arc campus is, to kind of right up to where the campus ends. There's another building there on the northeast corner.
Take notes for you.
Sorry.
Sorry, I'm muting Ken. I think Ken didn't realize he was muted. So continue on, please.
Thank you. So basically, we've always needed more parking, right? We have close to, if not over 200 staff in the whole building, including all job titles administrators. The Community School District 3 Superintendent's Office is also in our building, in one of our 3 schools in MS 256 Lafayette Academy. So we have a lot of occupants who are DOE employees, and very consistently, something that's raised to me as the union representative for about 90 of the 200 staff is that there's not enough on-street parking. It's basically first come, first serve. We have people who drive in from as far as Westchester County, and they get there at like 6:30 in the morning, and they're often forced to jockey for spots with other staff members who get there at 5:45 in the morning. Staff are forced to then park in a local garage. It's prohibitively expensive. We have a lot of turnover because the commute becomes too expensive for a lot of staff. And what made matters even more complicated over the last several years is we've had School Construction Authority exterior masonry work where they park a lot of the construction equipment and a lot of the construction materials on the curb where a lot of the parking spots are supposed to be. So that kind of exacerbated a matter that already was fairly problematic even before the construction started several years ago on the exterior of the school. So essentially the resolution is asking to extend the DOT signage 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. school days only. For on-street parking for employees only with Division of School Facilities issued parking placards that go on the dash. And in some really, like it would really give us, like when I counted, probably an additional 5, maybe 6, depending on the size of the vehicle, on-street parking spots. That's of course like talking about cars, like, I was present for some of the discourse about mopeds and motorcycles, and obviously those are much easier to park. I do use the Revels, but I actually ended up getting a Class M license, just as an aside, because I'm very big on safety and I wanted to properly know how to operate the vehicle. But basically, yeah, like we don't have too many people that drive in or ride in on motorcycles or mopeds. Most people use four-wheeled vehicles. So we're really in dire need of those spots. And it's only going to be 5, maybe 6 spots that we're asking for. So that's the potential resolution that I'd like to bring before the Transportation Committee. And if any of my colleagues are here, I'd like to give them time to speak as well. And I thank everyone on the committee for their time tonight.
Thank you. We have a couple of people whose hands are raised on this. So Rich Robbins, Jay Adolph, Raina, and that's what we have so far.
Howard, we need to call on committee members first.
Okay, so Jay Adolph, then Irena, then Ken Coughlin, and then Rich Robbins.
Yeah, I'm opposed to this resolution. Over the past few years, citywide, I think for bike lanes and restaurants and other usage, citywide, I think the last number that I saw of parking spaces that were lost was about 9,000. In our district alone, we probably, between City Bike and the bike lanes, are well over 1,000 parking spaces that have been lost. I believe it was 460 something on Central Park West alone. And while I sympathize with the Department of Education employees having to circle the block and look for parking spaces, the same inconveniences apply to our colleagues, our residents in the district. And I think that the employees of Joan of Arc School will just have to use their ingenuity and figure out a way to get to their jobs. But I'm against taking away any more parking spaces from our local residents.
Thank you, Jay. Irena, then Ken.
Thank you. I agree with Jay. I live on this block, this is 93rd Street between Amsterdam and Columbus. And Mr. Tompkin is right. There has been huge dumpsters on the 93rd Street side of Joan of Arc, because Joan of Arc fronts, the entrance is on 93rd, the back of Joan of Arc is on 92nd. The faculty already uses the schoolyard, which is designed for children, to park their cars. So that's already happening. What's happening on 93rd Street, to the speaker's point, is that there's been facade work and the dumpsters have taken up parking spaces. But also there are school buses that support this school that line up in this area as well. And there's a half a dozen schools within three or four blocks. You have Columbia Grammar, you have Trinity, you have this particular Joan of Arc, you have another public school on 92nd Street. So I don't think that we should single out Joan of Arc to have special parking hours. There are other institutions besides educational institutions in this neighborhood. And all of those people who come into this neighborhood are vying for parking spaces. That's my first point. The second is that there are parking garages in this area. As a matter of fact, the building I live in has a parking garage. And if teachers, faculty feel that strongly about driving, then they should park their car in the public, in the parking garages that exist in this neighborhood. And there's about 5 of them. I agree with Jay. I don't think we can continue to set aside parking spaces for particular workers. You know, the teachers get the parking spots. They don't live in the neighborhood, but they get their allocation, and then police get their allocation, and then fire get their allocation, and then the people who live in the neighborhood they don't have any place to park. So I worry about setting aside any more parking spaces for anyone The few that we have left, we also lost some for electric vehicles. I mean, it's like a death by 1,000 cuts. So I don't support this resolution at all. And I don't think every faculty member or school administrator at Joan of Arc and then multiple schools that are in, because it's co-location, there's a lot of different schools in this building are all coming from Westchester. And I think they should get on the subway.
Thank you, Arena. We have Ken, and then we have Rich Robbins, and then that's it.
Okay, well, I guess everybody should play the lottery tonight because I'm agreeing with Jay on the resolution, which is not the first time. But I think for a different reason, which is that I don't think we should be as a city incentivizing people to drive to work. And we should be wherever possible encouraging mass transit. Westchester County has Metro North. I haven't heard that many, if any of these teachers live in a true transit desert where they have no access to mass transit. The way I look at it is, there are better social uses for our curbs than free car storage, but we also don't want to use them to incentivize people to drive to work. So I think about it, what's easier to repurpose down the line? Is it easier to take away a privilege from teachers? I think that'll be a lot harder than, let's say someday we want to build a bike corral in front of the school to encourage students to bike to the school. And that would be a great use of the curbside space. I think it would be easier to do that if it was simple opposite side of the street parking. So I'm opposed also.
I think actually there are no more hands up. I will say I'm against this as well. Is anyone in favor of it who wants to propose a resolution for us to vote on? Because if we don't act, my suggestion is we just move on unless someone wants to propose to allocate these spaces for the Joan of Arc School. That's my proposal, to just move on to.
If we don't act, Howard, if we don't vote it down, who communicates with Joan of Arc that we have not approved this? Someone has to do that.
Right.
Just logistically speaking, Mr. Tompkin is still on the call.
Yeah,
He's not able to hear. My suggestion is we decide if we want to move forward. I think a kind, empathetic close to the matter may be a proper thing for the co-chairs to do. But if we don't take up a resolution, then we don't take up a resolution. But Mr. Tompkin is still on and can hear us.
Yes.
Just pointing out.
Andrew, do you want to wrap this up?
Well, Mr. Tompkin, we're sympathetic, but we hear from our residents that they've lost thousands of parking spaces and will continue to lose parking spaces for various reasons. And I think you've heard from the tone of the discussion that we want to encourage the use of alternate means of transportation, such as mass transit, biking, just other ways of getting around. And it would be really tough to be put in the position of telling our residents who frequently complain that they're losing parking that here we're going to do it for special purposes. So we absolutely sympathize. We have great respect for the teachers, and not just at Joan of Arc, but all of our institutions. But if we took this to its logical conclusion, everybody would be asking for this. We've had to turn down even our residential buildings who asked for specific places within their entrances. So we're in a difficult position. We absolutely love you and your fellow teachers, but we don't believe that we can move forward on this particular proposal. And I hope you'll take that message back.
If I may, Andrew and Howard, this is on the agenda as a request from Joan of Arc to extend this employee-only parking zone. I think it behooves us to vote on a resolution to deny that request.
So you're making a resolution?
I move that we deny the request by educators from the Joan of Arc excuse me, educational campus to extend the quote, NYC DOE employee-only parking zone.
Is there a second? Barbara's, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think
Second,
everyone
second.
has their position on that. I think that this resolution is clear enough. If you would be kind enough, Jay, to type up something and drop it into chat, that would be helpful. I think the resolution at this point, unless I hear an objection from Stephen, is clear enough to vote on. Is that okay with you, Stephen?
Yeah, but I do think Mr. Tompkins has his hand up again, and I think we should.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Tompkins.
Mr. Tompkins, you can still.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I understand everybody's position. I'm happy to take back the Transportation Committee's decision to my colleagues. I just want to make sure that what I communicate, back is consistent with the Transportation Committee's determination. So, would you like me to communicate it back verbally, or is there something I can take back in writing? That's really my question. I respect your decision. I just want to communicate it with fidelity to what this committee is deciding to my colleagues.
Andrew or Howard, I think perhaps an email would suffice, and Mr. Tompkins took the time to come to the committee would be
absolutely
in line to just Andrew, perhaps you can put your words concisely together so Mr. Tompkins can share that, so that he's shown that he's done his role and he's advocated, but can also give our position, would be my suggestion.
I'm
Thank you.
confused.
Do we have?
Are we now not, we have a resolution that's been made and seconded. Are we not voting?
Yes, we are voting.
Nobody said that. I was just commenting on a communication.
I'll finish my typing.
Yeah,
Okay,
if you
then
could
while
put it
you're
in the
typing,
chat,
Jay.
so I can put it in the minutes when you're done. Thanks.
Okay, while you're typing, Jay, why don't I raise my resolution, which I dropped into the chat, and I will read it. It's still one sentence. In order to improve street safety, CB7 supports amending the necessary laws to remove the limit on the number of street speed and red light cameras, and to allow all such cameras to be kept in operation at all times.
Yeah, that's good.
Robert, did you drop it a little bit ago? I'm just looking for.
Oh, yeah, do you want me to drop it again?
Yeah.
Yeah, just I'll probably help out Sarah.
Okay.
You can cut and paste as well.
I will drop it again. Hang on. Okay, I just pasted it again. Okay, why don't we vote on this while Jay is putting the touches on his resolution? Again, okay, we'll finish this and then we'll go right to Jay's. This is, again, just lifting the number of supporting legislation to lift the number of cameras, both speed and red light cameras, and to allow the city to operate them 24/7. All those in favor?
Okay, let's see. Committee members, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 committee members in favor. Great. Lower your hands. Well, let me lower your hands.
11, sorry.
Oh, okay, 11.
I think that's it.
I think that is everybody. So let's ask for non-committee
You got to
board
lower all
members
the
in favor.
You got to lower all the hands again. You have the opposite effect.
I did it.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
All right, all non-committee board members in favor of the resolution. 1. Steve, are you voting? 2. Okay. 2.
Just letting
That's
you
all
know
there
what
are.
it's like that
Just
delayed
2.
hand raise.
Yep, that's it. Great. That certainly passed. Wonderful.
Good. And now Jay's resolution. Are you ready, Jay?
It's there. It's in the chat.
Oh, it's there. Do you want to read it, Jay, and then we could vote?
The resolution, excuse me, to deny the request by educators from the Joan of Arc School to extend the quote, NYC DOE employee-only parking, closed quote, zone and street signage.
Okay, all those in favor of Jay's resolution denying the request from the Joan of Arc School, please raise their hand.
Committee members first. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 9. Any committee members opposed?
10, I think, 10.
Were there 10?
Yeah,
One,
it's 10.
Andrew, if
three.
you look at the top left thing under panelists, you'll see number 10 next to a hand raised, and you won't have to count. So if you pull up participants, a little trick here is you'll see a hand raised and the number 10. You see it?
Yeah, under panelists, I see 14 up.
But to the left of that, Andrew, I see it as well. It's
See,
just to the left. It's a little
To the
hard
left
to
of the
read.
P, you should see hand raised 10.
I don't see it, unfortunately.
Okay, Howard, perhaps you can help out, but
It says 10. Okay, you could lower the hands. It was 10.
Okay, they're lowered.
And Andrew, are you voting in these as well, just to make sure?
I am, of course.
I want to make sure.
All right, I think that was, how about non-committee members in favor of the resolution? Let's see what we have. 1, 2. 2.
That's it. I think there's no one else.
Right, that's it.
Okay.
Now, is Mr. Tompkins still on?
Yeah, I think I may have shifted him out, but my suggestion is.
Oh, here he is. Yes, why don't we send him by email the exact wording of this? Can we get your email, Mr. Tompkins?
Hold on. Mr. Tompkins, yeah, you can unmute yourself. If you want to share your information in the chat or now.
Yes. Can you, if everyone can hear me, yes, I'm gonna put my email in the chat right now. I'm typing it in the chat.
And then Andrew, perhaps.
Then I'll send it to you and you'll have something to distribute to your cohorts. Yep.
Excellent. Yeah, it's my first initial, last name, and at schools@nyc.gov. That's my official DOE email, so you can send it there.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, perhaps just a summary email of our position as well, and then the reso would be a nice thing for Mr. Tompkins to have in hand.
Absolutely.
Much appreciated, and thank you.
Thanks for your
everyone,
time.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I just
Okay,
have
of course.
one question, Howard.
Yeah.
I think there are only 10 members of this committee present, and how did we get 11 votes on one of our?
Oh, I assumed someone dropped off, but I didn't try to figure out who that was.
Because I think we're missing Roberta, but I think everybody else is here.
I think it was 10. I think it was 10,
Okay,
not 11.
okay.
Okay.
I'm counting 11 right now. Myself.
My
Howard.
strong suggestion is perhaps we can look back at the YouTube video and just sort of zero it up just to do it. And we've got a pretty long meeting and maybe we can move forward, but we'll make sure we get it right, Ken.
The problem is the YouTube video doesn't show the hand raise, I don't think.
It'll show who's here during the period of time of the vote, and it can reconcile who may have dropped off. I think there's enough evidence because I've had to do it before.
Okay, last item on the agenda. Jay has a proposed resolution. I will let him discuss it.
Okay, first of all, what this resolution is not, it's not a restriction or a proposal to restrict the use of electrically assisted bicycles in any way. And it's kind of a continuation and an ancillary issue that Irena started talking about a little earlier. And it's relatively simple. We had, as Rich's statistics show, we had 2 deaths in our district by electrically assisted vehicles. And my recollection is in both of those instances, it took extensive investigations by the NYPD to finally identify and locate the operators of the vehicles involved. And again, this is, as Ken observed with one of the accidents he was talking about, this is not assigning blame to anybody. The first part of it is simple. My belief is that anyone, particularly a pedestrian who's involved in an accident with an electrically assisted bicycle, should be able to identify the owner of that bicycle. The way you do that is you require it to be registered. Right now, under state law, cars, trucks, buses, public vehicles such as ambulances, fire trucks, police cars, motorcycles, motor scooters, mopeds are all required to be registered in the state of New York. Even tractors in upstate New York, which operate on roadways, are required to be registered. So the first part of that is simply to say that electrically assisted vehicles, defined in the vehicle and traffic law, also be required to register. That way they become identifiable. The second part of it relates to financial responsibility, which we all think of as insurance, although it doesn't necessarily have to be insurance as we know it. But right now, all of those vehicles that I mentioned, in order to be registered, have to provide proof of financial responsibility to the State Department of Motor Vehicles. Typically, the way that it's done with cars, trucks, buses, construction vehicles, etc., is that the dealers handle that. They handle the registration, they handle the communication with the insurance company to provide the verification to the Department of Motor Vehicles. So it's generally a seamless part of any transaction. And my belief is that if the state/city were to require registration and proof of financial responsibility, that ultimately it would be, in fact, the sellers of all of e-bikes, like everybody else, that would create a process to coordinate and take care of the registration and the financial responsibility. Now, also the third part of it simply says that operators of e-bicycles should be required to wear protective headgear, and that's for their protection, although there's an ancillary benefit of it, since if they don't have medical insurance or health insurance and they sustain a serious head injury, ultimately the burden falls on public facilities to provide care. And finally, and I know we've had that discussion, we've had a discussion in the past with other issues about the financial situations of delivery people in our district. And when I first drew up this resolution, my thought was that liability insurance, which is required for every other means of transportation in the state, would probably be expensive. And in order to relieve the delivery workers of that burden, the last part of my resolution provides that since these delivery workers are not employees, but they are by contract independent contractors, that nevertheless the delivery companies should bear the responsibility of providing for insurance. As a follow-up, and I did that before I actually knew about the availability and the potential cost of that insurance. So before the meeting tonight, I contacted what I believe to be the leading insurance provider for mopeds, bicycles, motorcycles, etc., and had a discussion with one of their representatives, and using our zip code as a potential location for an electrically assisted bicycle. And they told me that they provide 3 levels of insurance: $25,000, $50,000, and $100,000. The minimum required in New York State is $25,000. I asked them what it would cost the owner of an e-bike to purchase only liability insurance, and if it was available. And the answer is it is available. And in our zip code, or should I say my zip code, 10024, the cost would be approximately $100 a year. As an ancillary fact, the most expensive insurance cost with e-bikes, as it is with other vehicles, is theft insurance, not liability insurance. So by requiring those 2 things, you would make these 2-wheeled motorized vehicles much more identifiable should they be involved in an accident. And the victims of the accident, who far and away are pedestrians, would have a viable recourse to be compensated and pay the expenses for their injuries. And the requirement that e-cyclists wear protective headgear obviously speaks for itself. So that's the crux of my resolution. It's not, I don't believe it's an adversarial resolution in any way. It's increasing accountability. It's increasing the safety for all of the stakeholders in the transportation picture in New York City: pedestrians, e-bike operators, automobiles, any kind of vehicle that's involved in an accident. And I think, frankly, that it should be supported by everybody.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
We have Ken, the committee member, and then Rich Robbins, 2 hands up. Ken?
Oh, okay, Jay, I have a couple of questions, and then I guess I'll give my comments on this.
Sure.
I assume you're lumping together all e-bikes, including pedal assist, including city bike e-bikes in this, and including the kinds of pedal assist bikes that are cargo bikes that mothers and fathers take their kids to school on these days?
You know, Ken, in my last resolution, we had a discussion about excluding the pedal assisted bikes, and I was willing, that involved whether they should be allowed in the bike lanes. And I don't know if you recall, but it became moot because that part of the resolution didn't pass. And I recognize the distinction between these pedal assisted bikes and the other 2 categories. However, and I thought about including that exclusion, if you will, in the resolution, and decided not to. I think that registering it and insuring it really is protection for the owner of that. Should there be an accident, should there be an incident with a pedestrian, and especially when I learned that the cost of that insurance is de minimis, really, in the great scheme of things, I think it should all be included. So that's the answer to that question.
Okay, and you're aware that mopeds of the kind that killed Lisa Baines are already illegal?
Illegal in what sense, Ken?
If they're not they're already required to be licensed.
Yeah, they're required to be registered.
Yes.
And we're not
license.
talking, just to be clear, I know, I assume you understand it, and I apologize. But we're not talking about now licensing operators. And, we're talking about registering the vehicles. To your second question about city bikes, registration and financial responsibility are the obligations of the owners of vehicles. So none of that burden would fall on the users. That would, yes, City Bike, which is a subsidiary of Lyft and a multi-billion-dollar corporation, would have to bear the responsibility of registering their bikes, which they could do en masse, and would have to provide either an insurance program, and my guess is that a company of that magnitude, like the rental car companies, which is typical, provide self-insurance, which they bond. It's a relatively complex financial transactions, but large corporations with fleets of vehicles generally do that rather than purchase insurance. So the answer is they would be insured, but you as a user or me as a user, it wouldn't be our obligation. That City Bike would be registered and insured before we ever got on it.
And they would pass those costs on to the
that's up to
users.
them. That's
Yes.
up to them.
Okay.
They might.
My last question is, you're aware that operators of Class 3 e-bikes already are required to wear helmets?
I wasn't sure. I thought that might be the case, but I didn't have time to follow up on that, but that's fine. So let everybody wear them.
Okay, well, they're required because they're heavier and they can go faster.
Yeah, that's Class 3, but Class 2 and
yeah.
Class 1 aren't.
Okay, well, okay, now I'm gonna get to my comments, if that's okay.
With me, but I don't run the meeting.
No, I'm directing it to Howard and Andrew. So what Jay is proposing sounds reasonable on the face of it. And I have no doubt that he's sincere in wanting to make the streets safer, but this is actually going to make the streets less safe because it's going to do that because it's going to erect needless barriers to the use of vehicles that are proven to be safer than the car on our streets. And it's also, if this were put into place, such as licensing and insurance, would give the police another reason to pull over and arrest bike riders, which is one thing I don't think we need.
I have to interrupt, Ken. This is not licensing. This is registration of the vehicle. It is not licensing of the operator. That's
I know,
different
but the police will still pull you over, or you don't have a license.
A registration.
A registration.
Yeah. Well, you're not registered, right? So this resolution is attacking the very forms of transportation that are safer and more sustainable, and that we should be trying to get more of on our streets. Instead, it's erecting impediments to their use. It's making it harder to own and use an e-bike. There's a reason why the state classed e-bikes as bicycles. They wanted to make it easier for people to use them, and they wanted more of them on the streets. And that is to everyone's benefit. Making it harder to own and use an e-bike, it's a little like making it harder to get a vaccine in the midst of a pandemic. Alternatives to cars, like e-bikes, are our vaccine against the current carnage on our streets. And they are also part of what is needed to save the planet from the worst effects of climate change. And yet here, a member of Community Board 7 is proposing to discourage the use of e-bikes in the name of safety. wait till they hear about this in Glasgow. Intended or not, this resolution's real effect will be to perpetuate our city's auto dependence. And just to take one example of the registration of bikes, how's it working for cars? Fewer than 9% of hit and run crashes involving injury result in arrest. And that's with license plates and registrations. So, and also an e-bike rider involved in a crash almost invariably does not leave the scene because they hit the ground also. And that's, in the case of a driver, there are many, many cases where drivers claim they were even unaware that they ran somebody over. That's almost impossible on an e-bike. It is impossible.
I think you've made your point, Ken. I think we need to move on. There are other hands up. Thank you for your opinions. And Irena, you're next.
So I just want some clarification, Jay. Your resolution is specifically registering electric bicycles. Is it limited to that?
Yes, it is, because everything else is already required.
Is already requires registration?
Yes.
Okay. And are there any identifying numbers already on the well, let's talk about city bikes. Do city bikes have any kind of identifying number on it already, so that like if you sort of encounter one and the cyclist is okay, so Doug is saying no, William is saying yes. I think the issue for me with the electric bikes is that, and more really as it pertains to the delivery people, is that if you get into an altercation with them, or if they almost like hit you, or they go through the lights, there's just never any identification on them. So in the case of a delivery person, you can call the restaurant and say, I almost just got run over by your delivery person. Could you please have a conversation with them about yielding to pedestrians? So, I'm wondering with the electric bikes, with the city bikes, is there anything on them that, identifying number on them so that someone could file a complaint?
Well, I believe that City Bike has some. Is that correct, guys? I'm not.
Yeah, every city bike has a clearly identified number painted
and
on
that's
it.
really for the benefit of
roughly
city
this big. The font's
Right,
that big.
but the
That's
e-bikes
really-
and e-scooters that you sometimes see going the wrong way down the street or something, they don't have license plates.
Yes.
I don't know how you could possibly identify them.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And the City Bike number is really primarily for the benefit of the company, so they know who's using which bikes. But if you were in an accident with a city bike and they pulled away and you got that number and they parked the bike, you'd have no way of identifying. Whereas the way it works with registration of all other vehicles, once you have that number, I expect it would be a smaller plate as there are on motorcycles or mopeds or motor scooters, etc., then you can readily get that information from the Department of Motor Vehicles. So that's the difference. And Irena, as far as the restaurant delivery people, they have no identification. They're not required to have any identification. So this would be a means of identifying them. And again, the responsibility would be on these delivery companies such as DoorDash and Uber Eats and so forth and so on, which frankly are multi-billion-dollar companies. And for each one of their contractors, for them to have to pay around $100 a year, for coverage for personal injury and medical expenses, as every other vehicle does, is de minimis.
Okay, why don't we, Doug and then Barbara?
You know, I did have my hand raised, but I thought it was out of order. So what I'll just say is that, you know, the DOT rep talked today about how many of the crashes, and yes, most of them were motor vehicles, but some of them were e-bikes, were as a result of hit and runs, failure to yield. And, you know, the hit and run often is as she mentioned, is sort of evidence of, or very often due to concealing criminal behavior. So the hit and runs, I think, is what really speaks to me. If there seems to be a real lack of accountability here. And I think with transparency, there's a greater likelihood of accountability and maybe compliance. You know, you're watched, whether it's on the cameras, which we just voted on, and there is a plate, and there is insurance. I'm hoping that would result in safer streets, actually. So, you know, I am tending to support Jay's resolution, because I've also been hearing a cry from our community about why aren't these things registered? You know, I see many of the bikes that are taped up. There's no identifying. Sometimes people have, you know, if it's, whether it's a private individual or it's a delivery worker, what happens? And respectfully, Ken, an e-bike, and I've ridden on e-bikes, they can go fast, they're fairly heavy. And yes, you can strike someone and get away pretty quickly. Human flesh is a lot softer than the e-bike. So I understand there are conflicts and crashes where both people get injured, and that's terrible. But I think this resolution is going to promote more accountability, and I hope ultimately safety. But I'd like to hear what everyone else has to say. Thank you.
Barbara?
Jay, I want to thank you, because I think this is an excellent resolution. I'm completely in favor of it. I have to say, Ken, that I think it's some kind of convoluted reasoning to come up with the idea that people are not in favor of e-vehicles just because we want to see them registered. I was in Riverside Park today, and I watched as one out of every 2 or 3 regular bicycles was an e-vehicle on a place where they were not supposed to be, speeding along, weaving in and out of the pedestrian lanes down on the Esplanade. I saw e-vehicles going on the area that's closed off to any kind of bicycles, the place where you're supposed to detour. This is just it's very, very important that these things be registered. How many times have each one of us been constantly killed by, I won't just say e-vehicles, but bicycles as well, but we can't really register the bicycles now. So the e-vehicles go very fast. It just seems like a no-brainer that they should be registered, so that if we do have an incident, there is a number or something we can look to report them. Thank you.
Before I go to the non-committee members, I have a question. When I rent a car from Avis or Hertz, I'm not required to get liability insurance. So if I take a e-bike, wait.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
Wait, just stop. I have a rental car as we speak.
Guys, let's let Howard
down the
speak.
liability
Let's
insurance.
let Howard speak.
At a time, please.
Excuse me.
Let Howard
speak.
finish.
He
And I
is
will
allowed to
respond.
speak, and then we will hand things.
I have
He has
thank you,
peacefully
Stephen.
waited for every person to speak.
Yes. Go
Thank
ahead,
you,
Howard.
Stephen.
Go ahead, Howard.
I have a rental car now, and I'm sorry that the contract's electronic. There is no liability insurance. I turned it down. It was optional. So
I think it's automatic, Howard.
Wait,
that you
whoa,
get
whoa,
so
whoa,
much.
whoa.
Again, Andrew, let him speak for a minute.
Can I
and
answer?
be done. We can't crosstalk. Howard asked you a question. It's Jay's resolution. I guess you can answer, but
Okay,
can't all
I
talk.
will speak with Jay about this. I am bet my life certain I turned down the liability insurance Also, I know a little bit about insurance. I was general counsel of one of the largest insurance companies in America. There is no requirement that I purchase liability insurance. As I mentioned, I'm in Silicon Valley with a rental car. I do not have liability insurance. Jay.
What? Okay, first of all, Howard, we're talking about New York State.
Okay, this is
All right?
California.
In New York State, if that vehicle were registered in New York State, it could not be registered without Hertz either providing proof of insurance and I've read, when I was trying cases many moons ago in the dark ages, I represented some of those companies. And I can tell you that if it's a rental car company, Hertz, Avis, Alamo, all of them are essentially self-insured, which means they have to file extensive paperwork with the Department of Motor Vehicles, essentially saying we can insure ourselves. We don't have to buy it from an insurance company. But if that vehicle is registered in New York State, it is insured. Secondly, Howard, you own a vehicle, I believe, because you've said
yes,
so.
I do.
So if you are driving that vehicle with the owner's permission, your policy covers you.
That's correct.
Look, and
no, all I'm saying is that
in fact, you are insured, and by turning down, you're simply turning down additional insurance that Hertz will provide. But in fact, you are insured.
Okay, they made it very clear that if I turn down the liability insurance, I'm responsible for first dollar of liability, and that was disclosure.
Covers.
That disclosure was made to me when I've rented a car in New York as well, outside of the city, of course.
Well, if it's registered in New York State, it has to have either proof of financial responsibility or verification.
All I'm saying is that I personally, as the renter of the car, was not required to purchase liability insurance. And I personally, if I went up to a city bike that was pedal assist, under this resolution, I would be required to purchase liability insurance. I don't think we should have a higher standard for city bike pedal assist bikes
Howard,
than an SUV from Hertz and Avis.
Howard, that's not true. The responsibility to insure any vehicle is on the owner. In the case of city bike, you are not the owner. You are somebody operating that bike with city bike's permission. City bike would have to provide proof of financial responsibility or insurance, and city bike would have to register that bike, not the user.
And I suggest that
I just want to be clear,
that Rich speak. I'd like to speak. I think you guys.
I just want to say something. I agree with what Jay's saying. I think he's correct.
Okay, so let's just give other people. I know Rich has been patiently waiting and very eager to speak, and I'd like to make a comment, and then we can vote. But thank you, guys.
Right. So, I mean, there's clearly a concern about motorized bikes and other vehicles. Many of them are illegal. I know not many people on the current committee are concerned about data, but according to the police department crash data, of the crashes with injuries in our district so far this year, 232 had sedans, SUVs, or taxis as the vehicle type number one, while 9 had e-bikes. Once again, CB7 is at war with delivery workers, picking on the little guy. I wonder if anyone was invited to represent delivery workers for this discussion. I'll point out again, the vehicle that killed Lisa Baines was already illegal. And also, most of what's in Jay's resolution is already the law. It already exists in the administrative code. The question is enforcement. We know that NYPD can't enforce the speed of cars, which we know is killing a lot more people. They can't enforce all the illegal motorcycles flying through our district that are a real hazard, running red lights, completely ignoring all traffic laws. They don't have identification on them. And we know they can't chase after them. It took months to catch the person riding the illegal vehicle that killed Lisa Baines. Do we think there's any chance that NYPD will investigate vehicles that aren't registered if they don't lead to serious injuries or fatalities? The New York City Administrative Code, section 10-157, I'm going to put it in chat, already requires businesses using bicycles for commercial purposes to assign to each of their bicycle operators a 3-digit identification number, and it has to be prominently posted in a number of ways. This is completely ignored right now. We need to focus on existing laws, not proposed laws that already exist. Protective headgear is also required in this administrative code for delivery for commercial bikes. Is that really going to be enforced either? I agree this insurance sounds good, but is it realistic to expect delivery workers, many of whom are undocumented, to go out and get insurance? We need to pin this on the third-party delivery services to be responsible for compliance with all laws that they're already not complying with and that already exist. I also strongly support more enforcement of illegal vehicles in the parks and also of all riding on the sidewalk for people above 13 years old, I believe, and for riding the wrong way on streets. We need enforcement of existing laws that already are there. One question about this administrative code 10-157 is it says, it defines it as businesses using a bicycle for commercial purposes. It doesn't make clear the distinction between restaurants having employees who are riding bicycles or DoorDash or any of these companies using independent contractors. As I've said many times, that's our issue. That's where we really need to focus on a law change, is getting these companies to be responsible for their workers and not having this loophole of having them pay them as 1099 independent contractors, allow them to absolve themselves of responsibility. We should not be focused on passing laws that already exist.
Thank you. We have Steve Brown, and then I think that's it.
I would like to just a couple.
I'm just going to be brief, and then I have a request for Jay.
Just at the end, just a very quick couple of comments.
Okay. And then we'll call the question after that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is the community going to be allowed to weigh in?
Is there anyone from the community with their hands up?
There's one person. No, I guess now there is one. And now there's two, there's three. So yeah, the community should be able to weigh in. Ken, look, I'll just be very simple and then have a request, and then you should let these people. First off, I just strongly disagree and reject that this is something against delivery workers. It frustrates me when we hear it. I'd also disagree with the data given. I think there's plenty of data points that supply that this is an issue. So I would disagree with that as well. I don't believe the data does not drive a problem. I also continue to be frustrated that somehow it's either a car or a bike. I'm very supportive of all the resolutions. I was very keen. I had a lot of questions. I think cars are predominantly very dangerous, as we should do. That doesn't mean that we should talk about anything else. And if you think we do it unproportionately, we can do it. But the idea that it's a zero-sum game, I think, continues to frustrate us. All people are community members. I do have a suggestion, Jay, and that is, I would like you, I believe that we should delineate between throttle driving e-bikes and the foot support.
Pedal assist.
I'd like you to request, I'd like you to reconsider carving that out. I think I can go through it and take more time, but I really do believe that throttle driving e-bikes are much different than pedal assist. I believe that they are much more dangerous to the community. And I believe for various reasons that are challenging in terms of implementing, which means there's a lot of foreigners that are using e-bikes. I think a first step that would be widely more supported would be to carve out and focus on throttle driven e-bikes. And I don't know if we always say we don't have friendly amendments or not amendments, but I would request that you amend it to that, because I think that is a much more important issue and one that I think will get more universal support. And that's my request.
Just a quick response, Stephen. As I said earlier about what we considered last time about excluding pedal assisted e-bikes from the last resolution, I did think about that, and believe me, I recognize the distinction. I just think registering it and having insurance is actually of a great benefit to the owners of those pedal-assisted bikes.
Just pointing out, most people don't own pedal-assisted bikes. Most pedal-assisted bikes are owned by City Bike. Very few people. So I'll let you think. That is my request. I think that
the fact that the pedal-assisted bikes are owned by City Bike, in my opinion, is a stronger argument for requiring City Bike to register and insure them, it does not fall on the users or the renters. And Citibank can well afford it. It may, and you know, one thing we speculate often as to what these things may inspire. It may inspire Citibank to be a lot more careful and to provide instruction, et cetera, to its users, if in fact that this responsibility falls on them. So I understand your argument, and I appreciate it. I would prefer to take a vote on it the way it is, and between now and full board, I'll give it further consideration. I'm happy to discuss it with you or anyone else, Ken or anyone else, offline, and see what see what kind of consensus we can come to. I'm open to being convinced, but I believe right now that making it comprehensive is the best way to go.
Thanks, Jay. We need to move on.
Yeah, you have to let the community members speak. It's very important.
Yes. Let's see who we have.
If you like, I'll work with you so you can, if you want to pick
Patrick.
Patrick.
I see Patrick Weir. Is that the first one?
Yes, I made him able to talk. Patrick, you can speak.
Yeah. Hi, guys. I'm not sure why my camera's not on, but
it's okay. We hear you.
Not necessarily possible the way it's set up, but we can hear you clearly.
That's fine.
Patrick.
That's fine. So I've lived in the Upper West Side for over 20 years. I've owned several retail businesses in the Upper West Side, actually within the Community Board 7's territory as well. And I have to say, I feel like there's really a lot of blame being cast upon e-bikes. So I'd like to put a face, theoretically, or at least a voice in this case, on e-bikes, as opposed to just, I feel like people are just mad at like delivery drivers and foreigners. I'm not sure what that's about. But anyway, I have a special needs daughter. I've been using our electric cargo bike to get her around the city since 2017. I love the changes to the New York City biking infrastructure, and I've seen them develop over the years since I've lived here, and I'm looking forward to more in the future. And I have to tell you, when I take my daughter to school, it brings such joy to see so many other families with young children on the streets and in the park with their electric cargo bikes, and they're enjoying the city in a way you just really can't rival that in any other kind of vehicle. You're outside and enjoying the air. The main reason there's so many e-bikes right now is that they enable parents like me to take one or two children to school or on their play dates or whatever in a way they just couldn't do on a pedal bike. E-bikes open up the whole city, allow parents to share the joys of every neighborhood around the city. When I got my e-bike, it was like all of Manhattan, and then even the outer boroughs just flattened out and it was like they're right next to us. Like 3 weeks ago, in one weekend, we biked to Little Island, the Staten Island Zoo. We went on a ferry hunt at the Conservatory Garden in Central Park in one weekend. That was like 40, 50 miles. I couldn't have done that without my e-bike. Any action that makes it harder for us to bike in the city hurts us all. It decreases public safety because that means there are more drivers out there.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you letting me talk. I thank you, and I yield.
Thank you. I'm going to help out a little, Andrew. David Vassar, we'll have you speak now. You're allowed to speak, David.
Yeah, can you hear me?
David, can you hear?
We hear you.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, great, thanks. I appreciate this whole conversation and the preceding ones too this evening. I'm a veteran cyclist in New York City since I came here in 1993. I just, quickly discovered I didn't need a car to get around in New York City, and it's been amazing. And I concur with Patrick. That just the sheer joy of getting around by bike, especially at my age, it's really indescribable. And not to sound too hallmark about this, but essentially I'm with Ken too. Let's not do anything that discourages using an extremely healthy, relatively healthy and environmentally friendly form of transportation. I mean, one aspect of the many aspects of pollution that a four-wheeler brings is just the sheer amount of space that these things arrogate, and steal it. And this is also in terms of parked cars. I mean, the whole context of this conversation is, as a city whose streets and avenues are utterly dominated, not only spatially, but acoustically by, fast-moving multi-ton four-wheelers. And everybody's attention out there, whether it's a cyclist, a pedestrian, an e-biker, everybody's attention is somewhat hijacked just by the oppressive, need to pay attention to the four-wheelers, which can also catch you by surprise, making a turn, or pulling out of a parked space. And so, it's within that context that all of us have to operate. And I've come to really, really sympathize with e-bikers, in particular the delivery guys, who are probably making minimum wage or not much better. Their employers expect them to get there ASAP, if not sooner, as does the end user at the other end. So these guys are in a hell of a lot of pressure to perform and get there quickly. I don't want to put the onus on them, except possibly just with the demand that they ride in the right direction. I mean, a wrong way e-biker can really cause a lot of grief, and I can deal with them. I'm a veteran cyclist. I know how to handle that situation. I've never had a bad moment with a wrong way cyclist or e-biker, but it's the owner, the employer, who really has to take the onus of this. Yeah, I mean, I really starting to stammer a little bit here, but I really
thank you, David. Thank you very much. We have a couple other speakers we'd like to get to.
Stephen, can I ask just a question?
Mm-hmm.
Have you taken over the running of this meeting?
I'm helping out. Yeah, I am. I'm absolutely.
So you're chairing the meeting now?
I'm not chairing the meeting, Ken. I'm helping out running the meeting as in the bylaws I'm allowed to do as the chair. Any other questions, Ken?
Just curious.
Thank you. Any other questions, Ken? Great, we'll go on with the meeting, and I'm helping out. Carl, you're up.
Thanks, Stephen. Little hostility there for me to step into, unfortunately, but
none for you. We're happy that you're speaking. I'm sorry that you were interrupted. Go ahead.
In the air, though. Anyway, listen, I'm also a cargo bike parent, and I wholeheartedly echo Patrick's comments. This resolution, while I'm sure well-intentioned, is classic moral panic reasoning. It's labeling the shiny new thing, what we're referring to here as e-bikes, as a societal menace based on anecdotal grievance, while the overwhelming data points to the old, often ubiquitous, rather boring thing, in this case, cars, as being the true threat to public safety. Now, no doubt there are challenges ahead in integrating emerging micromobility into our transportation network. But the solution isn't knee-jerk reactions creating higher barriers to entry and greater restrictions on these devices. As Ken pointed out, licensing and registering automobiles has done nothing to stem the rise in real traffic violence. If this committee is serious about ensuring our neighbors can move about their communities free from the fear of traffic violence, I would encourage you to be focused on reducing car infrastructure and reallocating that space so that micromobility options have room to move safely. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much. I think there's one more. It's a William Milne. And then Andrew, I'll hand back to yourself to handle the rest of it.
Yeah, Howard is having some connectivity issues as well. So I hope we can get him back.
Calls, just, other people, Colleen, Elizabeth
is having trouble too. Yes.
Here, this is her calling me. So the next, Carl can speak, and then I'll see if I can get her in through the phone because she said she wants to vote.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Sorry, I think you meant Will can speak because I think Carl just went.
Yes,
so
my apologies, William. You're up.
No worries. Thanks, Steve.
Can we try to limit these
Oh, I'm sorry.
comments?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Hi, everybody. So this is my first community board meeting, and I just wanted to say that I've, enjoyed the friendly and respectful nature of it. It's been really cool to see, local government in action. And I just wanted to get on here and just say quickly that I really feel that we shouldn't make it harder to ride e-bikes here. I agree with, I just wanted to echo the sentiments of the other community members who spoke. I personally think that e-bikes are the future for personal and individual transportation in cities. They're super efficient and they're so, light compared to the 2 or 3 ton vehicles that we see constantly. That's kind of like the quote unquote normal way to do things. I'm not yet a cargo bike parent, but like one day I hope to be one. I think that, that would be a really awesome way to raise kids and to bring them around the community. And my fiance and I, are, as we are trying to decide where we go for the rest of our lives, like, I want to try and stay in Manhattan and I want to live here and I want to, I want to stay on the Upper West Side. And I think that, enabling this sort of way to get around is such a good thing to do. And so, I think everyone else has pretty much said it, but, this is a new thing and there are always growing pains. And I just don't want like the growing pains to stop us from growing at all. And also I'll just say that I understand that some e-bikers don't follow the rules and that's really frustrating. Bothers me all the time. But I don't think that just because of that, we should, make it harder for a whole new mode of transportation to emerge in one of the best areas in America for it to happen. Manhattan is the most dense area we have, and I can go anywhere on an e-bike really quickly. So I think that's great. So that's all I had to say. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Andrew, there's one more. Peter Arnston wants to speak, and then I think that's
okay. That will be it, and then we will have to come to a vote.
Peter, you're up. But
I remind you, I want a minute to sum up before the vote.
Yes,
Peter.
fine.
Peter, you're up.
Peter.
I'm gonna quickly say that I've been a biker since 1980 in Manhattan, and I support biking. I encourage it, but I also feel that we passed, we made bike lanes so that people would follow regulations, and that has not happened. And speaking on behalf of our community, which is north of 96th Street, we have a lot of elderly and a lot of families with kids. And I hear from them disproportionately that they are concerned about bikes that are going too fast and going the wrong direction. Also, what I find is that in all the talk about people, yes, that cars are the more dangerous, but we don't have accurate information about the bikes because they are not registered. So that people that get hit do not have a chance to follow up with the person that they were hit by, because people just take off, and there's no way of identifying them. So I think that this is something that is needed because of the irresponsibility of the entire biking community to rein it in. So that's my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Jay, would you like to do your 1-minute summary?
Yes. The constant reference to automobiles being more dangerous than bicycles and everything is irrelevant and simply a diversion. And the comments by the 3 cargo bike users and I think it's great that they use these cargo bikes to take their kids to school, and not a one of them will give up that cargo bike if he has to every 2 years online register that cargo bike for $100. Not one of them will give it up. All of that feel-good stuff, which is fine, and I encourage it. I think bikes are great. They're quiet. They don't take up much space. They don't pollute the air, but it's totally irrelevant, as is these constant comparisons to, not that there's anything wrong with this resolution or illogical about this resolution, but because it doesn't focus on the evils of automobiles, somehow it should be defeated. I'm sorry, but it's nonsensical. And it's time that people look at these things for what they are. They're for safety, they're for accountability, they're for giving people a remedy, they're for identification, and there's absolutely no reason to vote against this kind of resolution because you don't like cars.
Could I have the floor for 30 seconds? Stephen directly countered what I said.
You know, I object
which is
to
something.
talking
No.
5 times on these calls.
Yeah, I think we
Everybody
got to
has
move to a
struggle
vote,
to be
folks.
heard twice. He's been heard 5 times at length. We know what his point is. I think we
Jay,
should move on.
Jay,
Andrew,
the chair of the board
please do
I'm
it.
sorry, folks.
countered what
We
I said,
can't
which is
keep
something
doing
he
this.
did not do for anyone else. I believe
First of
deserve the
all, it's
courtesy of
Andrew,
30
it's Richard,
seconds.
it's Andrew's meeting. And number 2, I simply disagreed. I didn't counter. I said that I have a different position. I didn't use your name. I didn't say anything. I simply said my position, like many people have. I didn't say your name. I said
Which
my
is something
position
you
on
didn't
these
respond
subjects.
to anyone
And
else.
it's
All I
Andrew's,
asked.
it's Andrew's meeting. If he wants to do what he wants, not yours. You're not a member of this committee.
Because of
Andrew
you.
is the
Because
chair.
of you.
Well, it speaks
Let's
volumes
not
the way you behave.
get into this again.
Andrew, it's
I'm
your
trying to
meeting.
run this
Please move
meeting.
forward.
We've given everybody, including the public, their opportunity to speak. Everybody knows where everybody stands now. We need to bring this to a vote. I don't know how Elizabeth or Howard can vote if they can't get online anymore.
Elizabeth is on the phone. She can
Okay,
vote.
great.
Perhaps I tried calling Howard to do the same. He did not pick up. I was
Oh,
going to try
geez.
and help him to vote
Okay,
as well.
we have reached the point now where everybody knows what the resolution is about. Let us now vote.
I move
Committee
to
met-
table since we don't have everybody on the committee.
We have a quorum.
Yeah, we have a
I
quorum.
move to table. I
Absolutely.
make a motion to table.
Is there a second? Not hearing any.
I'll second.
Okay, there is a move to there's a second. We now need to vote on the move to table. All committee members in favor of the move to table, please raise your electronic hand. I see 2. Let me lower those. Committee members opposed to tabling, please raise your hand. Sorry, I'm just getting a little slow here. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4.
No,
What
it's
about you,
5,
Andrew?
including yourself.
So that's the resolution to table is defeated.
Just
We
so you
will
know,
now-
Elizabeth, just for the record, wants to abstain
On the table or on the vote itself?
on the tabling, and she's abstaining on that.
Okay.
I am too, by the way.
Now we are going to vote on the actual resolution. So committee members in favor of the resolution, please raise your hand. And let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4,
Just not vote based on this.
5.
It's too convoluted.
I see 5. Okay.
Jay,
We'll
I
lower
assume
those.
you're in favor of your resolution?
I raised my hand.
Yeah.
It didn't
not
raise.
up.
So 6?
6.
Okay, then it's 6.
Yeah.
I'm lowering those. Committee members opposed to the resolution, please raise your hands. I see 2. Any committee members abstaining?
Stephen, how did Elizabeth want to vote?
I advised Elizabeth that it was too convoluted and that she would just vote at full board, and she agreed.
Oh,
So
okay.
she's going to table. It just was too difficult for her to do.
Okay.
Didn't think it made a lot of sense.
Let me now ask non-committee board members, in favor of the resolution? May I see a show of hands? I see none. Non-committee board members opposed to the resolution? I see one. Non-committee board members abstaining on the resolution?
I'm abstaining just to make it easier.
Okay, that's one. Okay, then the resolution has passed and will go to full board. Is there any other business that may, I mean, it's pretty darn late. I think we need to wrap up this meeting.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have a small piece of new business.
Okay, let's hear it.
I brought this up with Barbara and Natasha in the P&E committee, but Barbara suggested I bring it up here, which is there's a intersection on the bike path, the Hudson bike path, which is very dangerous. It's at about 83rd Street, where the cyclists going northbound are coming down a hill and they're rejoining the pedestrian path. And they're often unaware that they're rejoining a pedestrian path, plus they're going downhill quickly. And then there are pedestrians who are walking there towards the promenade, the Esplanade, who are also often not aware that they're crossing, in fact, the most popular bike path in North America, and that they're about to encounter very fast moving bike traffic. It's a really dangerous situation. It needs a professional traffic engineer to look at it, and it needs to be professionally redesigned and with proper signage.
Signage, it sounds like it's the immediate need.
Signage will not, but alone will not do it.
No, not alone, but I'm saying, did Parks say they would do anything?
Well, what we need to do is begin a conversation with Riverside Park and specifically John Harold as quickly as possible before anybody is hurt. And so that is what I'd recommend. I don't even think we need a resolution about this, but I would propose one if that's what we need, but I think we should begin.
I think we can write a letter from both committees.
Right away. I think it's a matter of an email, but.
Oh, an email, yes, from both committees saying this is a matter of urgency.
Yes.
Andrew, Barbara, who's for Parks, has got her hand up. Perhaps she has.
Yeah, sure. Barbara, go ahead.
Well, after you brought this up, Ken, I spent a couple hours there today. That is where I observed all of the e-bikes racing on the pedestrian path where it continues north, and some of them going south as well, getting off their bikes so they could squeeze through the barrier and then continuing south. There's no question that this area could definitely use some signage. I took a lot of photos there. The signage that was on the pavement is completely worn away. There's one sign that says bicycles must dismount, and that sign is hanging by a thread and it's upside down and backwards right now. So there's no question about that, but I do not think this necessarily needs to be redesigned. You had suggested to me that they open up the Esplanade and allow bicycles not to have to detour, which is incredibly absurd, in my opinion. But if transportation were to take this up, my co-chair has asked that this be a joint committee meeting. So I'm conveying that, but I think that at the very least, what we do need there right now is some definite signage and some large signage.
Do you think John Harold would attend a joint committee meeting virtually?
Maybe, I don't know.
He has in the past.
I think you would get John Harold, or you certainly would get, I think we could definitely get a rep to discuss this. They're very good about that.
Yeah, I think that's the next move.
We have a new guy named Wesley Hamilton, who is the main guy from Riverside Park. I mean, he's not John Harold, but he is the, I don't know what his title is, but he has taken over for the old guy who was in Riverside Park, the day-to-day manager. He would be the one, I think, not John Harold.
I think he was very young, Barbara, just so you know. That's
What?
just joking, trying to lighten us up at the end of the meeting. So.
Is this a greater safety issue now that it's getting dark at 4:40 p.m.?
You bet.
Then we got to move on this. We will reach out to, well, Barbara, you want to reach out to John and see if he or a representative will come online with us?
When?
When is your meeting?
Oh, my meeting is jam-packed. It's next Monday.
It's too packed to have this considered?
I can't be on November 15th. It could be in December.
You can make it as an item. You can make it as an item for your next month meeting.
Yeah, it could be in December or it could be at your next meeting.
Do it on the transportation.
Unless we write them and ask if they will just come online with us and we discuss the situation with them. It doesn't have to wait months if this is an urgent safety issue.
Colleen's on the line.
You know what, Andrew? I observed exactly the same thing at 72nd Street where the bikes also race down and race up. And there's a flight of stairs there that goes up to Weston Avenue. It's no different. So
no, this is worse, Barbara.
Well, no, I don't think it's worse.
Why don't we discuss both places with him?
Look, I think look, I'm just saying that you have two committees. You got to decide if you want to do a dual committee, you run it in a committee meeting. I think that would be the proper way. You guys can devote. It's up to you guys and how you want to do it, but that's how you got to figure it out.
Maybe we could do both. Maybe we could send an email to Riverside Park and schedule it.
I don't think there's a problem asking for them to comment on it or this is a concern and can you give your thoughts, but if you want to have a discussion, I think we should figure out a way to have a proper discussion. And
actually, Dave, I think the best idea may be to send an email and have representatives of both committees meet them at the location in the park and show them what's wrong.
That's a good idea.
I'm fine sending them, I'm fine supporting a communication that we have a concern about this area. Would they be open to having
meeting us there? Yes.
Discuss it.
Great.
That work
That's
for you,
what we
Barbara?
should do.
Barbara, is that okay for you?
I guess so, sure.
Okay, well, they may say no, but let's see.
Well, let's try.
If you guys want to put it together, we can finalize it, but I'm okay with that.
Andrew, why don't we communicate about this? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we can adjourn unless there's any other business.
Hey, it's
Thanks.
Colleen.
Oh, Colleen, hi.
Sorry, just one quick update. The West 103rd Street Open Street is expanding by 1 block to include the block between Amsterdam and Broadway. And we don't foresee any issues with granting this request. So we will update our website this week and this will be active from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. And we've done our outreach. We've informed, of course, the community board and the local stakeholders and the precinct as well.
All right, thanks for the update.
You're welcome.
I think we will now adjourn. Thanks to everybody for participating in this. There were a host of great issues tonight, and hopefully everybody's point of view got heard.
Hello, I had my hand up. New business.
Hi, Doug.
Sorry to delay our departure any soon. Regarding the link that I sent in the chat regarding a bill at City Council, which would require the delivery apps to cover the cost of some drivers' accidents. I see that City Council member, it was Jonai's bill and Moya's. I note that Helen Rosenthal, our City Council member, is on, as well as Cindy. I don't know if she is in support of this bill, but I think we should take a look at it. On its surface, it sounds pretty good to me, and it might be something that we should have on an agenda. We may or may not want to support it, and I'd be very interested to know what our local City Council member and our City Council member elect has to say about it. Thank you.
Who did you say the two sponsors were?
That is Jonai and Moya. Jonai from the I know Jonai is term limited. I'm not sure about if Moya is from Queens.
Not term limited, but he did get defeated. Jonai.
Doug, advice I suggest, I'd be happy to work on an email with Helen and Cindy, and sometimes someone comes in and uses Helen's line, so I'm not 100% sure it's Helen, but if you want, I'd be happy to do an email so we can end the meeting and move on, and I'll coordinate with you to get some feedback on it. They want to put it on the next agenda item, that's certainly up to Andrew. But if you want to coordinate an outreach to get some feedback, I can do that.
Yeah, I'd like to read up on it more myself to better understand it, but it looked somewhat germane to what we were talking about tonight, at least in part. So
thank you.
Thanks. So Steve, just to be clear, what did you say you wanted me to do with the chat?
You save it. You got to save the chat, and it pops up on your screen as a little blip, and you'll see it, and you just save that little chat. So particularly for this meeting, but you want to save the chat.
I mean, I see the chat, but I'm not seeing the
when you end the meeting.
See the green ellipses
Bubble's going to pop up on your
right?
screen, and it's going to say chat. You just save it.
Okay.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Anything
Thank
goes
you so
wrong,
much.
have it.